stranger.
No one cared who I was till I put on the mask.
Because no matter how much you claim to love me, you can never have a frost giant sitting on the throne of Asgard.
That's what makes you dangerous. It's not the mask. It's not the skills.
I have been marked once, my dear, and let me assure you, no needle shall ever touch my skin again.
You want society to accept you.
Man of my word.
This is why only fools are heroes. Because you never know when some lunatic will come along with the sadistic choice.
You should have gone for the head.
The Court of Owls is a villainous and powerful group who seek to exert and wield political influence in order to shape the world as they choose. They are enemies of Batman and often use their group of highly skilled assassins known as Talons to eliminate those who stand in their way. These assassins are also immortal to an extent, as they are often imbued with a metallic alloy known as Electrum, which has astounding healing properties and can even reanimate and resurrect dead tissue. The Court of Owls was created by Greg Capullo and Scott Snyder, first appearing as adversaries to Bruce Wayne in the 2011 Batman series in issue number 2. Her name might not make her sound terrifying, but Granny Goodness is not as sweet as her name makes her out to be. She became a trainer of Darkseid's soldiers after impressing him when she herself was selected to train and become one of his elite hounds. Fans of Kingsman may find the story of how she was trained very familiar. During her training regimen, she was given a dog to train herself, who stayed with her and progressed alongside her. After bonding with the animal, whom she named Mercy, she was later instructed to kill it. Goodness refused and instead killed her trainer. When Darkseid asked her why she had done this, she revealed that Mercy was worth more than her trainer had been to Darkseid, as Goodness had trained the dog to not only be loyal to her, but to Darkseid above her. Darkseid tested the theory by ordering Mercy to kill Goodness and was impressed when he found the dog actually obeyed. Goodness of course was forced to kill Mercy, but this act would inspire Darkseid to shape and use Granny Goodness as his most reliable trainer and recruiter of soldiers, with Goodness being responsible for brainwashing those she trained and becoming the most loyal and fearless members of Darkseid's army. Number 8. Black Flash. In the comics, Black Flash acts as a symbol of death, and also sometimes as literal death for the speedsters. You see, the former Flashes and past speedsters have all been too fast for regular death to touch them, and so it seems instead they have their own version. Enter the Black Flash. The Black Flash draws power from the Speed Force like many of the other speedsters we've seen. This being is able to freeze time, but only for those who do not possess potent super speed powers. It resembles death in appearance, looking like a corpse of a zombified version of the Flash. While Black Flash has appeared in the Arrowverse, this Speed Force entity has yet to appear in the DCEU. Number 7. Mandra the Dark Monitor. Mandra is a pretty confusing entity, but also a fairly scary one. Mandra was once, or is, depending on what you believe, Dax Novu. And Dax Novu was once part of the Monitor. Following the events of Crisis on Infinite Earths, the injuries the Monitor had suffered caused it to splinter somewhat, dividing its body and creating other, smaller monitors. Dax Novu was one of these monitors. He eventually realized that the monitors were parasitic beings who were feeding on the energies of the multiverse, slowly consuming and destroying it. He informed the other monitors of this, but was shunned for attempting to share his realization. Dax then became corrupted, turning into a dark monitor known as Mandra. While we might eventually see the Monitor and AntiMonitor make their way into the DCEU films, it's unlikely we'll see this dark monitor pop up anytime soon.
Number 6. 7 Deadly Sins. Referred to as the 7 deadly enemies of man in the Golden Age of comics, the 7 deadly sins are villainous representations of the sins outlined in Christianity, with slight name changes to fit the younger audience, being pride, envy, greed, hatred, laziness, selfishness, and injustice. However, most modern appearances of these villains use their actual original names. Trapped in cartoon-like statues by the wizard Shazam, the 7 deadly sins have escaped their stone prisons many times thanks to the help of the other villains. However, they always seem to end up back as statues. When Spectre destroyed the Rock of Eternity and killed Shazam, the sins were released and wreaked havoc on the world until the Rock was rebuilt and they were captured and imprisoned once more. However, not all was back to normal, as Shazam was still able to hear them in his thoughts and they tortured him in his head. Pride, being the most powerful and dangerous of all the enemies, represents the desire of one to be more important and attractive than others. Envy represents one's jealousy over others and a desire to deprive a man from something he loves. Greed represents insatiable ambition and the desire to possess more than one needs. Anger represents uncontrollable feelings of hatred and violence. Sloth represents laziness and apathy. Gluttony represents overindulgence and overconsumption of anything to the point of waste. And of course, lust represents excessive desires or thoughts of sexual nature. Number 5, Lady Blaze. Having worked behind the scenes for a very long time, this red-skinned demoness is not one that you should take lightly. Disguising herself as Angelica Blaze, the Metropolis nightclub owner, Blaze later appeared in Fawcett City, where she took a new mortal guise as a mob boss. Her plans for the city and the Rock of Eternity connected to it were, however, quickly foiled by Shazam and the Marvel family. Interestingly enough, she's actually the one who corrupted Black Adam and led him down the path that you see him on now. With her arsenal of demonic abilities, we've seen Lady Blaze go toe-to-toe many times with the members of the Captain Marvel family and other DC heroes such as Batman. Check out this truly twisted demoness for yourself in her first appearance in 1990's Action Comics number 655. Number 4, Savannah. Known as Timothy Carnes, he was granted powers by the demonic forces of hell in order to challenge Shazam and become his dark opposite. Drawing his powers from Satan, Aim, Belial, Beelzebub, Asmodeus, and Kratos, Carnes just needs to say the magic word Sabak and he transforms into a hulking demon with super speed, strength, fire breath, and pyrokinesis. Sabak battles Shazam multiple times throughout his career, always on even footing with his rival right up to the point where, he's eventually defeated each time. The demon who granted him powers, they eventually get really fed up with his failures and strip him of all his powers one by one, letting Carnes be defeated for good. A new, more feral version of Sabak has appeared in the modern age with the alter ego of Ishmael Gregor. Check him out in his first appearance in 1943's Captain Marvel Jr. number 4, or if you're interested in his new adaptation, check out 2004's Outsiders Volume 3 number 8. Number 3, Mr. Mind. Now, mentioned briefly at the beginning of this list, Mr. Mind is a tiny alien worm from the planet Venus with an extremely high intelligence and is one of Shazam's arch enemies. He's notably the first villain to bring together other villains who had been defeated previously, uniting them into the Monster Society of Evil. Mr. Mind's strength lies in his intelligence, able to use the assembled supervillains to run Shazam ragged and nearly defeat him on multiple occasions. Mr. Mind can use mind control to force others into working for him, along with, some other generally ominous assertions of psychic powers. His most significant role was as the primary villain of 52, in which he was revealed to be behind all the events of the series in a dastardly bid to literally eat time itself. Having first appeared in Captain Marvel Adventures number 26 all the way back in 1943, this worm has caused some serious damage in the DC universe. Number 2, Dr. Savannah. Considered to be Shazam's golden age nemesis and a primary arch foe to this day, Thaddeus Bodog Savannah Sr. was one of the richest men in Fawcett City and used his intellect and resources to try and defeat Shazam. He deduced Shazam's identity early on in his career, giving him a very unique relationship to the hero as he could strike him at any time. Savannah was a genius mad scientist who operated from the planet Venus with his own family of children, and in exile, he turned against the world and plots for world domination. Of course, he's frequently stopped by Shazam, confounding him to no end. In the modern era, Savannah was reinvented as a scientist who became corrupted by dark magic, turning him to a madman with the body of a withered old man. As the leader of the Monster Society of Evil, Savannah has been part of many of Shazam's greatest battles, so why not read his story for yourself, starting with his first appearance in Wiz Comics number 2. And number 1, Black Adam. An obvious choice for the number 1 spot on this list because there's nowhere else this dastardly villain deserves to be. The first man to be given the powers of Shazam, Black Adam went mad with power and was stripped of his abilities, lying dormant until the modern day, during which his ancestor was granted his powers. Black Adam possesses powers drawn from the Egyptian gods as opposed to, Shazam's powers. Black Adam eventually somewhat reforms, dismissing his prior evil as corruption, and takes over a city-state in Egypt, and then marries a woman named Isis. But his new family is eventually killed, and Black Adam swears vengeance on the world, which leads to a battle with Shazam once again in a war that spans the globe before being stripped of all his powers again, after Shazam forcibly changes the magic word that grants him his abilities. Portrayed by Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson in the live-action movies, I cannot wait to see what the DC universe does with this character in the future.
Number 10, Manbat. The Manbat is not always a villain of Batman's. He has been known to sometimes be an ally as well. But when Dr. Kirk Langstrom is in his Manbat form, he is always horrifying. So horrifying that the closest thing we got to him was in one of Batman's nightmares from Batman v Superman in the DCEU. However, this wasn't really specified to be Manbat specifically. Dr. Langstrom aimed to create a serum to help the deaf and blind, but accidentally made a serum that also transformed anyone who used it into a giant bat-like creature. Both he and his wife suffer from its effects at one point, becoming the Man-Bat and She-Bat respectively. It would be cool to see a horror-style Batman film featuring these two monstrous and sometimes villainous characters. Number 9. Solomon Grundy. While he's appeared in lots of animated films, Solomon Grundy has yet to make his debut in the live-action world of the DCEU. This could be because of his monstrous appearance. Solomon Grundy is a zombie-like villain who sometimes ends up as a hero depending on the circumstances. He has a Frankenstein-type vibe to him as well, which likely makes him too monster-like for the likes of the DCEU. Although there are so many horror-inspired characters and villains in DC Comics that would be cool to see if that genre made its way more into the films. Horror DC, I would watch those movies. Number 8. Hugo Strange. Hugo Strange has a place in the television series Gotham, where he is played by B.D. Wong, and is depicted as the chief of psychiatry at Arkham Asylum. But we have yet to see the insane mad scientist make an appearance in the DC Extended Universe. Because he is often closely tied these days to Arkham Asylum both in the comics and in the Batman video games, it would be kind of hard to introduce this madman who has a tendency to experiment on patients and transform them into monsters into the DCEU without first introducing the famed Asylum. Hugo is a formidable and frightening Batman foe, not just because of how insane he is, but because of how brilliant he is too.
It's a perfect plan. With this machine, I can imagine Batman to be anyone I choose. And these fools will pay a fortune for it.
He was even able to use his smarts and deductive reasoning to uncover Batman's true identity. Number 7. Mr. Mixie Pizyelik. So, Mr. Mixie might not be horrifying to look at. He's kinda silly looking, truth be told, but that doesn't mean you shouldn't be scared of him. He has more power than you can possibly imagine, and in fact, anything that he can imagine can come to pass, should he will it. The only limit to his reality-altering powers are the limitations of his own imagination. Like Batman's Joker, he has at times claimed to be the ultimate Superman foe. In one story to prove this, he even killed all of Superman's enemies and allies just to prove how evil he was. Mr. Mixie also forced Superman to kill him as well, forcing Superman to break his own moral code. Ooh. Talk about being on Joker's terrifying level of ultimate villainy.
Oh, I don't feel so good, but it's still worth it.
Number 6. AntiMonitor. Speaking of monitors, we should also quickly touch on another scary and powerful one, sort of the scary and powerful one, the AntiMonitor. AntiMonitor is a supremely powerful villain who threatened the very existence of the multiverse during the events of Crisis on Infinite Earths. He controlled the antimatter universe, and is hell-bent on ensuring the destruction of all things. So much so that even after AntiMonitor is defeated, Nekron ended up trapping the AntiMonitor's body, and as it was later revealed in Blackest Night, using it as a source of power for the Black Central Power Battery. While we might get a sort of Crisis-inspired storyline in the DCEU with all different alternate universes and timelines from DC in television and film being acknowledged, it's more likely that they'll go the Flashpoint route as opposed to the Crisis on Infinite Earths route. Number 5. Dr. Death. The most recent incarnation of Dr. Death from Prime Earth was only around for 5 issues, so it's not just his horrific story and appearance that will likely bar him from appearing in the DCEU. It's also just that he isn't really one of the main villains. He doesn't have as much clout. However, in the few issues we did see him in, he proved to be a terrifying villain and foe. Dr. Carl Helfern was a brilliant scientist working for Wayne Enterprises on a serum that would strengthen bones, causing them to become more durable instead of breaking when under stress. However, his failed attempts combined with other mental trauma and strain caused him to go insane. He killed his scientific team, injecting them with a failed version of the serum that caused their bones to grow until they were ripped apart. Number 4. The Corinthian. The Corinthian isn't specifically from DC directly itself, but is from an imprint of theirs that used to be known as Vertigo. Well, it's still known as Vertigo, but it no longer exists. It was discontinued, and instead, we got Black Label, which is also an amazing line, but everyone was obviously still sad to see Vertigo go. One of Vertigo's most famous series was Sandman, which also featured some of DC's characters who made cameos throughout. The Corinthian, however, was not one of these, but is a character unique to the world of Sandman. While we are getting a Netflix series for Sandman in in 2021. I also think it would be super cool to get some darker toned DC films. Among them, it would be cool to get some Sandman or at least a Sandman film. Although the Corinthian might be too monstrous to actually make an appearance, even if we did get a Sandman film. He is one of the nightmares that Dream made. At one point, he escapes the dreaming and ventures out in the world, where he becomes a serial killer who pulls out and eats his victims' eyes. He himself has mouths where his eyes should be and usually wears sunglasses to disguise his monstrous appearance. Ugh, eating eyes. It allows him to see everything that you've seen, which is, gross still. No, it's still gross. Number 3. Dr. Destiny. Speaking of Sandman, I want to talk in particular about another horrific villain who appeared there, although this one also exists as a horror and supervillain within the direct DC Comics universe as well. There he wielded a device he'd invented called the Materiopticon. This device was later retconned to be Morpheus's Dreamstone, which his mother gave him, when Dr. D appeared in Sandman. Dr. Destiny was hypnotized by the Justice League to prevent him from dreaming and becoming too powerful. As a result, he was driven insane and ended up in Arkham Asylum, wasting away, becoming a skeletal version of himself. When he escaped, he wreaked havoc at an all-night 24 hours diner where he tortured the patrons and staff before Dream finally caught up with him. Thank goodness, cause that issue, woo, it's crazy. Number 2. Professor Pig. Professor Pig's real name is Laszlo Valentin. He is a former Spiral agent who went insane and became obsessed with curing people of their individualism in order to perfect them. When the crime syndicate temporarily took over Earth, Gotham City was overtaken by the criminals who ruled in Batman's absence. Pig himself used the hospital as his own HQ and worked from there, kidnapping civilians, sedating them, and transforming them with strange, cosmetic, and mutilating procedures, using involuntary patients to create his own horrific Dollatron army. He was created by Grant Morrison and Andy Kubert, and also first appeared in 2011's Batman series. Number 1. Jane Doe. Jane Doe is a serial killer who served time at Arkham Asylum. She appears to not have any skin of her own, appearing to be covered in exposed muscle tissue. Instead, she covets the skin and lives of others. While she doesn't appear to have any specific superpowers, it has been implied that she might be possible of shapeshifting. She often gets to know her victims before killing them and adopting their identities, sometimes even wearing their preserved skin as a suit, instead of simply using makeup to disguise herself. For example, I could be Jane Doe right now and you wouldn't even know. That's how good she is at it. Oh my goodness.
Number 10. Monster Society of Evil. The very first supervillain team to appear in the comics all the way back in 1943's Captain Marvel Adventures number 22. Many of these villains mentioned will be talked about later in a lot more detail, but I thought this team was worth mentioning as a whole first. When Mr. Mind first came to Earth 2, he organized his first team of evildoers, including Mr. Who, Neola, Ramulus, and the Dummy. However, this was just one iteration of the team, as it was later revised in the Earth S universe to include beings from other worlds such as Goatman, who had been his first minion, Evil Eye, a hypnotic monster, and the crocodile men of the planet Punkus. The most villainous combination of this team though is when Mr. Mind enlisted the help of Mr. Atom, King Kull, Ogar, and Black Adam to plan an all-out attack on the Rock of Eternity alongside the inhabitants of 247 worlds who were being forced to work for them. Number 9. IBAC. Originally a small-town crook, Stanley Stinky Printwhistle made a deal with Lucifer after he was caught in a bridge explosion. In exchange for his soul, he was granted the power to become a champion of evil through the magical word IBAC, turning him from a frail criminal into a muscled supervillain. Contrary to Shazam, IBAC is empowered by 4 of the most evil and terrifying men to have ever walked the earth. Ivan the Terrible, who supplies terror, Cesare Bourgeois, who gives IBAC cunning, Attila the Hun, who gives him fierceness, and Caligula, the sponsor of cruelty. With his powers, IBAC was faced off against Shazam many times, most commonly as a member of the Monster Society of Evil. Although he has reformed many times over the course of his comics, IBAC is still a staple character in the Shazam universe and will forever be an annoying thorn in his side. Number 8. Captain Nazi. Now, that is a pretty controversial name. You can definitely tell that he was created in a different time, eh? Originally thought to be genetically altered by his father during the Second World War to serve Hitler's Third Reich, he was actually revealed to be the living avatar of National Socialism given a physical form, and that as long as there are Nazis in existence, he would exist. In the modern era, Captain Nazi had been active since the 1940s, but decided to put himself in a suspended animation so that he could come back in modern society and revive the Third Reich. Once reanimated, fought alongside his brother Wolf Krieger, his granddaughter, and other superpowered villains. After meeting his apparent end while fighting Batman and Jason Todd, we later find out that he actually survived and appears in Kahndaq, to release all of its captives and winds up being defeated by Kahndaq's ruler, Black Adam. With the powers of superhuman strength, speed, and stamina, as well as flight and invulnerability, Captain Nazi is both dangerous and a little controversial. Check him out in his first appearance in Masters Comics number 21. Number 7. King Kull. The brutish caveman who ruled the race once known as the Submen, a race that lorded over humanity until they were overthrown in a revolt back in prehistoric time. Being the last of his kind, King Kull survives in suspended animation, awakening in modern times to attempt to become its ruler once again. He fights with Shazam multiple times throughout the comics and is always seen as a massive threat due to his immense size, strength, and the strange technology that he brings with him into the modern era, such as his sin bombs. Sometimes he's enough of a threat that even the Justice League of America must intervene to help bring him down. Usually a member of the Monster Society of Evil, Kull has appeared many times throughout the years, although ever since the Crisis on Infinite Earths reboot in 1985, he hasn't appeared in a mainline comic story since. To tide yourself over until his big return into the Shazam universe, why not check him out for yourself in his first appearance, Captain Marvel Adventures number 125 from 1951. Number 6. Mojo. Just looking at this guy gives me shivers up and down my spine. Mojo is a part of an alien race from a planet known as Mojo World that resides in a pocket dimension known as the Mojoverse. He is a powerful sorcerer whose full power is unknown, and outside of his homeworld of Mojo World, Mojo possesses the ability to create anti-life energy fields that kills any natural organism. He can project concussive blasts, and he can even increase his own power through television ratings. Mojo has been seen manipulating so many characters in the Marvel Comics, including Rachel Summers, who he got to work for him for a while, but once she broke free, he took matters into his own hands and decided to create his own versions of the X-Men to serve under him, and thus the X-Babies were born. Fast forward past a ton of attempts to get his ratings up so he could increase his power, we see a desperate Mojo launch an all-out attack on New York City that separated the X-Men and sent them into intricate recreations of key periods in their lives. Now, I doubt Mojo will make it to the big screen anytime soon because, well, I mean, look at him, I can only imagine how grotesque he would look, but also because of his methods. Mojo is so self-absorbed and wants nothing more than to be powerful and liked, which for him kind of go hand in hand. So he'll do anything and everything and get rid of anyone who stands in his way. Check out Mojo for yourself, starting with his first appearance in 1985's Longshot number 3, and see if you agree with why I doubt we'll ever see him in the MCU. Number 5. Dracula. A lot of you are probably looking at your screen right now like, Jack, are you sure you know what you're talking about? Dracula has played a pretty decent role in a lot of Batman stories, but this is Marvel. Well, you might be surprised to find out that Dracula has been a pretty prominent figure in the Marvel Universe for quite some time. Like most iterations, Vlad Dracula is the supreme ruler and the world's most powerful vampire. Driven by lust for power, companionship, and blood, his centuries of undead existence have brought him into a conflict with vampire hunters, other immortals, and, more recently, superpowered heroes. Born in 1430, Dracula didn't become the vampiric overlord until 1459, after he was beaten in battle by the Turkish warlord Tarak, and was taken to Egypt to be healed. However, it was revealed that he actually turned into a vampire. With newfound vampire powers such as superhuman strength, speed, and agility, a regenerative healing factor, hypnotism, and weather manipulation, Dracula wreaked havoc for centuries with few that could oppose him. Fast forward many years to modern times, and we see Dracula go up against the likes of Blade, Johnny Storm, Mephisto, Thor, and even tried twice to make Storm a vampire so she could become his bride. I can't imagine that Disney will ever give the green light for this character because a blood-sucking, all-powerful vampiric villain doesn't really fit with Disney's style. Not to mention that they don't really like to make R-rated movies, and that is the only way this character would work. Appearing for the first time all the way back in 1951 Suspense number 7, why not familiarize yourself with Dracula just a bit more? Number 4. Shadow King. Had to include the Shadow King on this list because he wasn't on the last one and he is too good, or I guess bad, to leave out. He is allegedly a multiversal manifestation of the dark side of the human consciousness that came to be after the first ever nightmare. Operating through Amal Farouk, who acts as his human vessel, the Shadow King is stated to be a true Omega telepath, making him the most powerful telepath on Earth besides Charles Xavier, as he has been shown to overtake some of the most strong-willed characters like Black Panther and Genta without them even being aware of it. Shadow King was actually the one responsible for the Psy War, when he tricked Cyclops into causing a massive wave of energy that destructed psionic powers across the world. However, he ended up stretching himself a little bit too thin, attempting to link with all the minds on Earth, and was defeated by Psylocke in her new Shadow astral form. This wasn't actually the end for him though, as he was around well after Charles Xavier's death. He even possessed his body for a while. Shadow King has appeared over many Earths in the Marvel Universe, taking a different evil form each time, such as on Earth 6141, where he merged with Professor X, becoming Shadow X, or on Earth 1298, where he also took over Charles Xavier and became Onslaught. I can't imagine Marvel ever putting the Shadow King on the big screen because he is far too big a threat. it seems impossible to actually get rid of him without another being whose powers are on par with him, which is actually what happened in the comics when Professor X and Psylocke teamed up. Check out this multi-universal being for yourself, starting with their first appearance in 1979's X-Men number 117. Number 3. The Brood. The insect-like alien race that travels through space with the goal of finding hosts to infest with their spawn. Yuck. Brood societies work similar to how an average bug colony works, with them living in clans or swarms that serve under the Empress Brood. They're a truly savage race that not only enjoy the suffering that they cause others, they also revel in the terror that their infections cause their hosts. They don't technically have any powers, but they are incredibly resistant thanks to their exoskeletons, they have tentacles that are capable of long-range attacks, and they use their razor-sharp teeth and stingers in close combat to deliver either paralyzing or fatal poison. The Brood have been seen on Earth many times throughout Marvel history, going up against the likes of Carol Danvers, Wolverine, Fang, and a large number of the X-Men as well. Sometime after their initial appearance on Earth, a mixed team of X-Men and the Fantastic Four discovered that the Brood Queen and her squadron were leading an attack on Earth, with the first of the bunch arriving in New York City, but thankfully they were stopped rather quickly thanks to a Cerebro-enhanced Emma Frost. They have been seen around since, but I'll let you discover what happened for yourself. Now, I really can't see Marvel bringing this alien race to the MCU as they are anytime soon. Maybe if they weren't partnered with Disney they would be willing, but I can't imagine their parent company would be cool with a bunch of malicious insect-like creatures getting people pregnant Predator style. Check out the Brood's first appearance for yourself in 1982's X-Men number 155. Number 2. Demogoblin. Jason McIndale Jr. had enough of losing against Spider-Man and the Green Goblin, so in their quest for the power that he craved, he ended up following a bunch of demons back to their lair to confront their Dark Lord. Impressed with his efforts and will, the Demon Lord bestowed upon him superhuman abilities through a demonic possession. However, the demon proved to be incompatible and ended up ripping away from his human host and began living separately as the Demogoblin. Determined to destroy all sinners and redeem himself, the Demogoblin went up against the likes of Spider-Man, Ghost Rider, Venom, and even Jacob McIndale Jr. because they were the only ones willing to stand in his way. After the Demogoblin's initial death from a church pillar crushing him, he was resurrected by Carnage using Shriek's body as a new vessel, and dubbed himself the Demogoblin now. Alongside her new BF Carnage, she traveled around with Man-Wolf to hunt down Misty Knight, and she would have killed Misty Knight if it weren't for Man-Wolf intervening. In a more recent storyline that takes place after Dark Carnage's death, Demogoblin started calling herself Saint D and basically started her own religion. Considering that Carnage is too scary for the MCU to bring in and that they play such a large role in the Demogoblin story, it makes sense that this character wouldn't be introduced anytime soon. Not to mention that they are totally fine with killing and do whatever they think is necessary. Take a look at this terrifying creature for yourself in their first appearance as the Hobgoblin in 1989's The Spectacular Spider-Man number 147, or feel free to skip ahead to their time as the Demogoblin in 2019's Absolute Carnage Lethal Protectors number 1. Number 1. Null, the Symbio God. Once an ancient malevolent deity whose existence predates the universe itself, and was originally content to just drift through the endless abyss that existed before time itself. When the Celestials started creating the universe, Null was awakened by the light of creation and was pretty pissed because his kingdom of darkness was pretty much ruined. After killing one of the Celestials, he was cast back into the void once again, and then he created a symbiotic suit of armor out of the darkness he commanded and started his journey across the universe with the goal of getting rid of the other gods for good. The only weakness that Null has is against the light, which refers to the various powers that are wielded by the cosmic entities. Null is the one responsible for the creation of these symbiotes that we're all familiar with, you know, the ones that make up Venom and Carnage. He's the reason we have two of the most terrifying villains in the Marvel Universe, and that alone makes me want to go nowhere near him. Not to mention, he's the one who gave Gore the God Butcher All Black the Necro Sword. Historically, we've seen Null go up against Silver Surfer and so many gods, coming out on top every time, and then in modern times we have seen him go up against symbiote users like Venom and Spider-Man. I can't imagine we'll get to see Null in the MCU for a couple of reasons, the biggest being that Venom isn't in the MCU, but that's not my whole argument, don't worry. Null is a literal god capable of pretty much anything that he sets his mind to, and he is powerful enough to create symbiotes and beings that can overpower any of the heroes that we've seen both on and off of the big screen. He's too much of a threat right now, but that doesn't mean that I'm not hoping he'll show up one day. Trust me, I really want him to be there. For now, read all about the Symbio God for yourself, starting with their first appearance in 2018's Venom Volume 4, Number 3.
Number 10. The Dummy. The Dummy was created in the 1940s and has faced Superman countless times. Now, he isn't just strictly a Superman villain, he has faced other superheroes as well. He's quite intelligent and uses a gun quite a bit. Not much else is known about his backstory, since it was never really revealed if he was actually a literal ventriloquist dummy or just something else. Number 9. Hobby Robber. So there isn't much about Hobby Robber either, which seems like a trend on this list. But he made an appearance in 1944 and was created by Jerry Siegel and Sam Citrin. So his history of Superman is simple, but very strange. Clark Kent apparently has a rare clock collection, and Hobby Robber steals it. Yep, it's pretty weird, but in the original multiverse he gets erased by Crisis on Infinite Earths. So I guess that clock collection disappeared as well? I guess we'll never know. Number 8. Klakok. Okay, I am really sorry if I'm mispronouncing that, but you know what? We'll just move on. He is a villain and has the ability to grow double his size. He was a part of Superman's Revenge Squad at one point. Yes, apparently that was a thing. He obviously has this vendetta against Superman and has fought him from time to time. He hasn't appeared in too much throughout the comics, but being on a squad that has had members at different times like Bizarro, Parasite, Metallo, Lex Luthor, and even Superman himself. Yes, Superman himself was at a time part of the Superman Revenge Squad, but Superman was only part of it to help take down evil Kryptonians that were, led by none other than General Zod, so I guess it makes sense. Number 7. Sand Superman. Sand Superman got his powers by a combination of a few things. Superman's powers, sand, and psychic energy, which came from a dimension called Forearm. So, yeah, that's how we got this Man of Sand. See what I did there? He is quite the powerful foe, and if they are close, he can drain the Man of Steel's powers. The other crazy thing about how these two are linked is that the planet will blow up if they have any physical contact, since he can drain and consume Superman's powers. He even sort of turned good, wanting to save lives, instead of hurting them. Number 6. Mr. Zed. Mr. Zed is immortal and quite fascinated with famous people. So what he likes to do is travel, through a time to capture famous people and his crystal, and that is on top of his cane, basically capturing their souls. He also has the power of hypnotizing people and resurrection. Of course, he became fascinated with Superman. When attempting to try and capture Superman into his crystal, he is unsuccessful due to where he came from and how powerful the Man of Steel is. In the end, his crystal explodes, freeing most of the souls that he captured throughout time. He has faced off with him other times as well, whether it was in the past or the present day version of himself.
Number 5. Zombie. Best known as an associate of Bane, Zombie was actually a pretty big reason behind Bane being able to become one of Gotham's best known criminals. He was once an assistant at the medical facility that gave Bane his abilities, and he then aided Bane in escaping prison, and was the one who found a way for Bane to get his daily dose of venom. Shortly after Bird's encounter with Batman, Bane defeated the Dark Knight and his rise to power started. Bird, Trog, and Zombie started a rampage over the city to eliminate competition and recruit more members to Bane's crime empire, as they were commanded by their boss, of course. Bird, Trog, and Zombie were sent by Bane to verify the supposed threat of a new Batman, and the three of them were brutally defeated by the new Dark Knight. They were arrested and locked away by the police, and each of them were interrogated about Bane's activities, but none of them revealed anything because they are good henchmen. They did eventually break out of prison, but it didn't take too long for them to end up back there. Check out Zombie in his first appearance in 1993's Batman Vengeance of Bane, number 1. Number 4. Mr. Camera. Called Mr. Camera for obvious reasons, because of the camera lens helmet he used to wear on his crimes, and also because he employed all sorts of photographic devices on his criminal raids. Used to record his crimes, and on one very special day, he actually managed to get some footage of Batman and Robin in their secret identities. Although he was captured that same day because, Batman and Robin really didn't want that information to get out, he did manage to hide the tape, hoping to use it eventually against the dynamic duo. Not too long after, Batman and Robin found the tape and discovered that the footage was actually too obscure to even see anything, which meant that their secret had never actually been exposed and that they had nothing to worry about at all. This particular version of Mr. Camera was unfortunately erased from the DC Comics history after Crisis on Infinite Earths, but there have been some one-off appearances in recent years of this character. Check him out for yourselves, starting with 1954's Batman number 81. Number 3. Lockup. Lyle Bolton, aka Lockup, is another non-powered villain who specialized in incarceration, high-tech security weapons, and escapology. He was first seen capturing the criminals Cheraxis and Maxwell Veazey, but decided that these minor villains were too easy for him, and went for the big guns in the form of Two-Face, who he successfully captured and took back to his private prison. He is eventually stopped by the police while targeting a criminal turned state evidence, and is revealed to be Lyle Bolton, who was previously discharged from the police academy for being too gung-ho and dismissed from several security security jobs. Later during the events of No Man's Land, having taken control of Blackgate Prison in the aftermath of the Cataclysm, he enlisted the KG Beast and the Trigger Twins to act as the wardens for his prison and ruled with an iron fist. But Batman tolerated his presence because he required Lockup to keep captured criminals in check to prevent Gotham from being overrun with them. Lockup was kept under strict orders to treat the prisoners well. And then towards the end of the event, Batman enlisted Nightwing's help to overthrow Lockup so Blackgate could be used by the lawful authorities once again. Check him out in his first appearance in 1996's Robin Volume 2, number 24. Number 2. Johnny Stitches. A Gotham City underboss for the Intergang, Johnny Donetto worked for Tobias Wales until he was caught stealing from him and was subjected to some pretty serious torture and mutilation, and just straight up thrown out of a window to die in an alley. Thankfully, he was found by Bruno Mannheim, who thought that Johnny had some potential, and he had Desaad fix him and stitch him up as best he could. Now operating under the name Johnny Stitches, he worked aggressively to remove the remaining large criminals in Gotham after the deportations of all supervillains from Earth. With his newfound power over people, Stitches used the Iceberg Lounge as a meeting place for Intergang and would eventually cause Penguin some pretty big trouble with the various vigilantes of the city. After Batman's sudden disappearance, Stitches organized a wager in Intergang's HQ, but they were interrupted by Vigilante, who broke into the place and challenged Stitches with the intention of killing him. Arming himself with a knife, Stitches was about to start his attack, but Vigilante was suddenly attacked by an invisible person that pushed him out of the building. Check him out in 2008's Gotham Underground, number 3. Number 1. Film Freak II. Known only as Edison, this man is the second Film Freak, a disturbed cinephile who had a strange obsession with Catwoman, and ran a late-night WUAB TV Studios operated show displaying amateur film clips made by his underlings. After obtaining footage from one of his henchmen showing Selina Kyle and Holly both wearing their Catwoman suits, he poisoned his goons, citing Alfred Hitchcock's Suspicion, in order to not let him divulge the information. He later deduced the real Catwoman, Selina, was hiding in Gotham City under the pseudonym of Irina Dubrovna, the main character of Val Lewton's 1942 film Cat People. He, along with Angleman, broke into Selina's apartment and threatened her infant daughter Helena. Eventually, due to Film Freak's obsession with shots and filming, she was able to incapacitate both of them, thankfully. She also asked her friend Zatanna to wipe her identity from their minds, similar to what she had done earlier with Dr. Light, and made them confess to their crimes to the authorities. Fast forward a bit, and in his final act of villainy, we see him manage to get his hands on an atom bomb, paying homage to Stanley Kubrick's Dr. Strangelove, and while citing Network, announced on live TV that all Gothamites would have had their lives saved if they were able to solve a film-themed riddle. However, after shooting a movie critic that he employed to deliver the uranium for the bomb, Film Freak was finally defeated by Catwoman, who also managed to defuse the bomb. Number 10. Wacky Man. Although not inherently evil, this unnamed clown of a man is still considered to be an Aquaman villain. Wacky Man was a clown that used robotic versions of aquatic creatures in his act, and because of that, he decided to model his costume after Aquaman's. He was actually a pretty decent clown, bringing in people from all over to see his act. However, this wasn't always the best thing because he eventually caught the attention of some pirates who kidnapped him and forced him to use his robotic sea creatures to not only commit crimes, but to go after the real Aquaman. He proved to be someone who was not truly evil though, because once freed from the pirates, he teamed up with Aquaman to take them down. Check him out in his only appearance in 1957's Adventure Comics number 233, and let me know in the comments below if you think he truly deserves to be considered a villain for that. Number 9. Clownfish. Sidney Allard was once a doctor with a pretty shady practice. He was killing his elderly patients and just covering it up as much as he could. After part of San Diego sank, Allard was recruited by Black Manta and was tasked with taking blood samples of every resident in now Sub Diego. This included Aquaman, Aquagirl, and Cal Durham. After those three were rescued, Allard slipped away seamlessly and started looting a room full of chemicals. However, he stumbled a little bit and ended up breaking a vial that contained a strain of the Joker toxin. Engulfed in the toxin, Allard completely lost his sanity, took inspiration from a fish in a bowl, and colored his entire body purple and yellow, and then from then on dubbed himself the Clownfish. He then decided to break into Cal Durham's home and shoot his partner Kaisha Salton with a mini harpoon, and then strapped a bomb to her torso. Obviously, Aquaman arrived on the scene to save Kaisha, but Allard seemed to be prepared for that because he was somehow able to make Aquaman take a truth serum drug so that he could find a way to get rid of him for good. Thankfully, Aquaman was able to sober up before he answered any questions though. Having failed, Allard pushes the trigger for the bomb. However, it's revealed that the one strapped to Kaisha was a fake, and the real one was hidden under the couch. Now everyone was saved by Aquaman before the explosion, and Clownfish made a clean getaway. Check out his story for yourself, starting with his first appearance in 2007's Aquaman, Sword of Atlantis. Number 8. The Awesome Threesome. Known together as the Awesome Threesome, Torpedo Man, Claw, and Magneto, but not the one that you're thinking of, were a team of robotic villains who went up against Aquaman and his Aqua family. Debuting in 1967's Aquaman Volume 1 number 36, this villainous team was telepathically summoned to attack a science hall, but it turns out they picked the wrong day to do it though, because Aquaman, Mera, Aqualad, and Aquababy were all visiting the pavilion and sprung into action the moment they heard all the commotion. Magneto destroyed the Gyro Moleculizer, which was trapping a convicted alien on Earth for 5,000 years. With the moleculizer destroyed, the alien was free to escape and released his control on the robots. The threesome was apprehended quickly, however the alien escaped to Atlantis and began causing some serious damage to the city. It was able to then make a quick getaway thanks to a flying saucer, and once away it then released its mind control from the three robots once again, and they were back to their old villainous selves. Check out this robotic team of villains for yourself in their first appearance in 1967's Aquaman Volume 1, number 36. Number 7. Fisherman. An international criminal who started off as a thief who would steal anything he could get his hands on and sell them to the highest bidder. He came in contact with Aquaman after stealing a formula that could enlarge any living matter, and ever since then, the two have been enemies. Fast forward a little bit and we see the Fisherman clash with Aquaman on multiple occasions, each time ending in his defeat, and he eventually takes up residence in the villain-friendly country of Zandia. That was, however, just the first iteration of the Fisherman, however, because there have been a few Fishermen over the years, and that's because he is actually a parasite that takes over a host and forces them to commit crimes and do his bidding. The second iteration attacked the Gotham police during the Infinite Crisis alongside Scavenger, Red Pansy, and Riddler, and was shot down by Marcus Driver. And the third was actually just an imposter Fisherman that was revealed to be a xenoform parasite that controlled its host using fear. Take a look at this character for yourself, starting with their first appearance in 1965's Aquaman, number 21. Number 6. Human Flying Fish. One day, way back in the day, Victor Bragg and Dr. Krill saw Aquaman using his fish telepathy to catch a bunch of baddies. Krill turned to Bragg and convinced him to undergo a special operation to turn him into a human flying fish, because Krill believed that Aquaman would not be able to stop him from that. With his newfound abilities of enhanced speed, flight, and ability to breathe underwater, Bragg was able to outperform Aquaman and escape on every mission he was sent out on. It took a little bit, but Aquaman was eventually able to figure out Bragg's tactics and devise a plan to trap him. Luring him in with a rumor of a bounty of uranium that was somewhere lost at sea, he took the bait and attempted to find it. The human flying fish was then taken out by Aquaman using electric eels, and he alongside Dr. Krill were arrested and taken away. Bragg was later seen as a criminal for hire, but was taken out rather quickly by Joseph Curry, the new Aquaman, and honestly hasn't really been seen since. Take a look at his story for yourself, starting with his first appearance in 1960's Adventure Comics number 272.
Number 5. Curse. Also known as Algum, Curse is one of the strongest dark elves around. He at one point allied himself with Malekith, and while he often lacks the direction, intelligence, and depth to really become a standout villain when it comes to his interactions with the Thunder God, he is still likely one of the more powerful of Thor's villains. Curse only served Malekith for a time, as well as he later found himself betrayed by Malekith, causing him to break ties with the other dark elf. The Beyonder also bolstered Curse's power levels, increasing them using his own cosmic energy, after sensing and being attracted to Curse's intense hatred for Thor. The Beyonder of course just gave him a power boost for funsies, cause well, he's kind of chaotic like that. Number 4. Doak, the Destroyer of Gods. Doak was a villain who originally started out as a pretty kind-hearted and pious man. He became a villain after feeling that the sacrifice of his daughter to his gods had not really been justified. Losing his faith in the gods as his people were attacked, he decided to accept godlike powers that were offered to him, so he could avenge his and people's losses. Doak set out to kill the gods and was predicted to be the one who would also strike down the gods of Olympus in due time. As such, Thor set out to stop Doak before he could arrive, venturing out into space with Hercules and Beta Ray Bill. Number 3. The Enchanters 3. The Enchanters 3 were brothers who were also masterful sorcerers. They each were armed with their own living talisman, which amplifies their magical powers, and their names were Forsung, Brona, and Magner. Yep, they certainly sound like they could be Thor villains just based on those names. These brothers decided one day that they just wanted to conquer Asgard after running into the warriors and Thor's companions Balder and Sif. When Balder and Sif caught on, they rushed down to Earth to warn Thor of the Enchanters' plot. Thor teams up with his fellow Asgardians, including Odin, and manages to defeat the Enchanters, slaying one of them and trapping the other two in an alternate dimension. It's also later revealed that the brothers actually had a fourth sibling named Enrocked, and following this revelation we also learn that his formerly trapped brothers are free and have also returned, prompting Thor to once again take on these magical foes. Although having a fourth brother kind of ruins the whole Enchanters 3 name, but I guess because one of them was dead it still works, because now there's still 3? Number 2, Bloodaxe the Executioner. Bloodaxe is a villain who basically gets all of her powers from a mystical Asgardian axe, which grants its user power but also corrupts them. It was once wielded by Scourge the Executioner and as such is imbued with evil energy that also compels whoever wields it to kill, eventually driving them into an insane bloodlust. Bloodaxe wielded this power to kill low-level criminals indiscriminately and as such attracted the attention of Thor. Oddly enough, while Jackie Lucas, Bloodaxe's civilian identity, first appeared in the late 80s in the Thor comics, she would not appear as Bloodaxe until more than 50 issues later. She also originally wore Scourge's armor during her first appearance as Bloodaxe, in addition to wielding the enchanted axe itself. Number 1, Quicksand. Quicksand was a pretty random villain who first appeared in Thor issue 392. She was originally a human who was transformed into a sand elemental creature due to a nuclear accident. So basically she's female Sandman. As such, she holds a pretty big grudge against nuclear power, which seems to have been trendy to do in the 80s, as there was also a protest going on at the power plant she attacked at the time that she attacked it. This comic was likely reflecting the opinion of the times, as the Chernobyl disaster would have only happened a couple of years prior to this issue's release. It came out in 1988 and the disaster at Chernobyl happened in 1986. History. People at the time were likely afraid of nuclear reactors and the dangers of having a power plant nearby due to the relatively recent and severe disaster that had happened. Quicksand as such attacks the power plant, blaming nuclear energy for her mutation, when Thor comes along and stops her. Oddly enough, this wouldn't be the last we'd see of Quicksand either in the comics, or even the last time we'd see her fight Thor. Still, she's pretty obscure.
Number 10, Death Urge. Similar to how the DC Universe has the Black Flash acting as messenger of death, Marvel decided to dip their toes into that realm as well, and out came Death Urge, a wraith-like superhuman entity with the ability to fly at some ridiculous speeds, turn intangible, and of course, pull various weapons like spears and swords out of their body. When these weapons strike Death Urge's targets, they immediately die with a blackness spreading from the spot where the weapon struck and passed through the target's body. If the weapon happens to pass through someone other than Death Urge's target, that person only feels a numbing coldness but will not actually blacken or die. Death Urge's only targets are apparently only those who have craved death and oblivion to some degree, so I guess I better be on the lookout. Not a whole lot is known about Death Urge besides the fact that he once served Oblivion and had a very close relationship with Craig Hollis. In Hollis' earlier life, Death Urge acted as both a guardian angel and a bad influence for him, goading him into dangerous situations in an attempt to awaken him to his own immortality. However, this relationship was damaged beyond repair when Hollis' girlfriend killed herself and Death Urge arrived to collect her soul, with Hollis believing that Death Urge had goaded Terry to commit suicide and from then on viewed him as a tormentor. He has been seen up against not only the Avengers but the Fantastic Four as well, and each time he has caused some serious trouble, so it's kinda weird that he hasn't had too many appearances.
Number 9, Mole Man. Mole Man originally appeared in Fantastic Four issue number 1, but has become a villain to not just the FF over time, but the Avengers as well. In fact, despite not being one of the strongest villains around, the Avengers even at one point had to team up with the FF to defeat Mole Man, who had kidnapped Sue Storm. Mole Man became a villain because he felt that society had rejected him. He aimed to take revenge on the world for this. Mole Man has taken on more than one Avengers team as well, even having beef with not officially sanctioned West Coast Avengers, believing the team had attacked his home of Subterranea located beneath Monster Island. He is also tangled with Tony Stark's Mighty Avengers as well.
Number 8, Star Stalker. Varanus aka Star Stalker is a dragon-like alien monster from the planet Vormir. By wrapping himself in a cocoon, he was able to transform himself into a larger, more powerful form, known as his ionic combustion form. In this form, Varanus was able to absorb the ions of anything around him, allowing him to drain the energy of enemies such as Thor, or even shorting out Iron Man's armor. But that's not all, because he frequently used this power to gorge himself on entire planets, destroying them in the process. After attacking and defeating Krull, this monster caught the attention of the Avengers, and although he was able to hide from them for a short period of time, Mantis was eventually able to find him and the fight ensued. Starstalker was able to dispatch the Avengers pretty easily by taunting them with stories of his origins while refusing to reveal his weakness, before spinning himself into another ionic cocoon to boost his power to destroy the Earth. Eventually, Mantis was able to figure out that his weakness was solar energy, and her and Vision used this weakness to just turn him into stone.
Number 7. Red Ghost. The Red Ghost is also a Fantastic Four villain as well. He is a Russian communist who is known for his mad science. He studied and sought to recreate the mutating effects of the cosmic rays, which were responsible for giving the Fantastic Four their powers. As such, Ivan Kragoff built a ceramic ship and went up into space with a team of apes. He and his apes gained powers. Ivan himself gained the ability to appear intangible, hence his name as the Red Ghost. Because, you know, he's a communist and he can be see-through. And he also became the leader of the Super Apes, because they also got powers. Later on, he would team up with MMan and ended up fighting the Avengers while they attempted to rescue their kidnapped teammate Giant Man from MMan's clutches. He was also thwarted by the Avengers later on when he attempted to rob a bank randomly with his team of Super Apes.
Number 6. Cyclops. No, not Cyclops, Cyclops. Also known as One Eye for, well, obvious reasons, Cyclops was a member of an ancient insect alien race that worshipped the Dark Gods, and because of this, Cyclops was eventually chosen by the Dark Gods to find a power source for them in exchange for his race getting to conquer Earth. He was quickly able to capture the Hulk, however the other members of the Avengers were able to defeat him relatively easily, and this resulted in Cyclops losing the Hulk. Deemed as incompetent, the Dark Gods abandoned him as their agent and he was dumped into the microverse by them, with no way to return to his original size or home world. Still wanting to impress the Dark Gods in any possible way, he devised and executed a plan that turned him into the god of the microverse. He was confronted by the Hulk and Dracula but managed to hypnotize and enslave the Hulk. However, that didn't last for too long, so out of desperation, Cyclops just accidentally annihilated himself with one of his devices. Poor little evil guy. Number 5. Whiteout. Now I'm really starting to sense a pattern here because extremely little is known about Whiteout and her past. A lot of it is just, assuming and speculation. We do know what her power is though. Whiteout possesses the superhuman ability to project a flash of blinding white light from her body. This light renders her opponents blind for approximately 1 minute, and for some unknown reason her power only affects victims that she chooses, and not everyone within the range, meaning it can be used very tactically. So like I said before, a lot of her past life is speculated, but it's assumed that she has resided in the Savage Land for some time, and it was there that she was recruited by the mutant Zaladane to join her forces of the Savage Land mutants. In her only known mission for Zaladane, Whiteout and the other Savage Land mutants attacked the X-Men in Chile while they were looking for Polaris. The X-Men defeated the Savage Land mutates pretty easily in this battle, and Whiteout presumably just fled. Check out more of her for yourself, starting with her first appearance in 1989's Uncanny X-Men number 249. Number 4. Fever Pitch. Real name unknown, Fever Pitch was a very handsome young man until his mutant powers manifested and he accidentally destroyed his own face. Thanks to his mutant powers, his entire body is made of an organic flame that allows him to radiate intense heat, fly, and discharge and throw explosive plasma. As the years went by and his powers became stronger, he eventually burned through his entire body, leaving him nothing more but a fiery skeleton, which ultimately led him to becoming a member of the incarnation of Gene Nation, organized and led by the Dark Beast. Fever Pitch was seemingly killed on his first mission by Nate Gray after his energy was siphoned off, but he did later resurface in Berlin trying to capture Abyss so that he could sell him off to some researchers. Now skip ahead a little bit and we see Fever Pitch classified by the government as a national security threat, as he was one of the few mutants to keep his powers after the decimation of the mutant population. He was one of the many mutants to have a tracking chip implanted in his head before a trip into Salem Center. When the chip's true nature was discovered, he had it removed by Mr. M, who he followed when he led an exodus from the Institute. Fever Pitch was later captured by the anti-mutant group the Sapien League and was injected with a dose of the Legacy virus, causing his powers to straight up overload, killing hundreds including himself. Check out his whole story, starting with his first appearance all the way back in 1999's Generation X, number 50. Number 3. The Nasty Boys. Comprised of Mr. Sinister, Ruckus, Multiple Man, Slab, Gorgeous George, Hairbag, and Ramrod, the Nasty Boys were the strike force organized by Mr. Sinister to take down the X-Men. The Nasty Boys made their first appearance all together battling the X-Factor after Slab initially attacked Strong Guy. After losing this battle, Sinister posed as Steven Shafran and unveiled his plan to kill the Scarlet Witch. Shafran, obviously upset, attempted to kill him only to be killed himself. During all that, Ramrod was also deported from the country but did make his way back, illegally. Needless to say, this is a very busy group. The team was later regrouped by Sinister and they hunted Malice, who was trying to kill Polaris so that they couldn't remerge, and they didn't stop this hunt until Malice was apparently destroyed by Polaris herself and Havoc. A while later, the team decided to reform during the final days of mutant kind after X-Man's return that ended in the death of most of the X-Men. Now it was revealed to be a bait set up by the Upstarts to lure out the remaining X-Men, which they were not aware of, and they were all promptly killed by the Upstarts. Check out these nasty, nasty boys for yourself, starting with 1992's X Factor, number 75. Number 2. Forearm. Michael McCain, aka Forearm, was one of the founding members of the Mutant Liberation Front, a team of disillusioned and rebellious mutant youth. Now Michael is called Forearm for pretty obvious reasons, but I will explain his powers a bit for you anyways. He has 4 arms, hence, you know, the name. And thanks to this mutation, he also possesses superhuman strength, stamina, and durability. Now one of their first missions under the leadership of Strife was to liberate the incarcerated New Mutants members Rusty and Skids, and the team broke them out of prison and the pair joined the MLF out of just straight up confusion. Skip ahead a bit and the MLF travels to Muir Island where they meant to steal the legacy virus data, but while they were there, they learned about the Xavier protocols and decided to steal them instead. The team was confronted by Excalibur though, and they were quickly teleported away empty-handed. After a second attempt to steal the legacy virus, Forearm left the team as he felt betrayed by Moonstar, who revealed herself to be an undercover SHIELD agent. He later resurfaced as a part of a fighting championship in Madripoor called Bloodsport, where superpowered opponents fought to the death. However, in an unfortunate turn of events, Forearm was killed during a fight with former Serpent Society member Anaconda, who just broke his neck. Oddly enough though, he was somehow able to recover from death and made an appearance as a member of the MLF once more not too long after. Give a story read starting with 1990's New Mutants number 86. And number 1, Executioner. Now with a name like Executioner, you can probably guess what this guy is all about. Carl Denty was a field agent for the FBI whose partner Fred Duncan was a member of Charles Xavier's Underground, who would cache the technological equipment that the X-Men confiscated from alien races. After his partner's death, Carl inherited all of the equipment and decided that mutants had caused way too much damage in the world, so he donned a lot of the equipment and started calling himself the Executioner, beginning his quest to punish mutants who had not been legally convicted of their crimes. Starting off with killing the mutant tower, Denty quickly teleported away once the X-Men arrived on the scene to stop him, but he was smart and decided to teleport to the X-Mansion to kill the comatose Emma Frost. However, he wasn't smart enough because he was still stopped by Cyclops and Cable. Now none of that deterred him though, because he still continues his mission of punishing mutants. However, for a while he actually did some good as he teamed up with the Punisher in Washington DC to protect the pro-mutant activist Reverend James Conover from the Mutant Liberation Front. This act landed him the position of potential recruit for the initiative. However, who knows if he was ever actually on that team, because that was one of the last times we saw him. Check out his story for yourself, starting with 1993's Uncanny X-Men Annual, number 1993. Number 10. Verman. Edward Whelan from Earth 616 had a pretty average childhood aside from his abusive father, which is actually what led him to the streets and crime. Now it's not exactly known when, but at some point he got the attention of Baron Zemo and was subjected to many tests that gave him various rat-like traits and abilities. Aside from the obvious rat-like appearance, his strength, stamina, speed, and durability were boosted to superhuman levels, and he also gained the ability to communicate with and command rats that are up to 2 miles away. After gaining these powers, he was sent out to end Captain America. However, he ended up being overpowered by Cap and taken back to S.H.I.E.L.D. for interrogation. He managed to escape fairly quickly though, and since then he has been a pretty big thorn in both Captain America and Spider-Man's sides. However, they have actually used him to their advantage sometimes, as Spidey once used him as bait for Kraven the Hunter. Whelan since his introduction has been a part of the Hood's gang and the New Revengers, so he has definitely been in his fair share of crazy fights and done some terrible things, like the time he almost straight up murdered Spider-Man and would have succeeded if he wasn't interrupted. The reason I think he's too scary for the MCU to bring in is because he not only looks utterly terrifying, but thanks to his genetic alterations, his mental capabilities are at subhuman levels, meaning he pretty much works on primal instincts alone. I mean, sure, he's still able to talk, but his reasoning skills are not the best, so he's pretty ruthless. And let's not forget that he also likes to eat people. Check him out for yourself in his first appearance in 1982's Captain America number 270, and let me know if you agree with me. Number 9. One Above All. Residing in the lowest depths of the underworld known as the Below Place, the One Below All is the dark counterpart of the One Above All. It is the source of the mutagenic third form of gamma energy, which allows it to use gamma mutates to manifest itself whenever it feels it's necessary. The One Below All is actually what gave the Hulk his powers in the first place, as the gamma bomb test partially opened the green door that Below was kept behind. Fast forward through some really cool events that you should definitely check out for yourself, and we see the One Below All possess the bodies of Brian Banner as the Devil Hulk, Walter Longkowski as Sasquatch, and the Absorbing Man, which led to the final battle of the Immortal Hulk arc. Revealing its true form, a giant green cloud of crazy gamma energy, the One Below All torments the Hulk so much that Bruce Banner and the Hulk actually separate. However, Absorbing Man was able to reroute the gamma energy the demon was using back into the Hulk's body, and with one powerful thunderclap, the One Below All was stopped, at least this time anyways. One Below All is too terrifying for the MCU in my opinion, because he's literally a god, and the reason behind all the gamma radiation and the gamma power being such as the Hulk and Abomination, you know, etc. I mean, who knows? Honestly, if they want to send Mark Ruffalo off with a great story, they could finally give him his own movie trilogy and have this demon as his final battle. I highly doubt it though, so in the meantime, check out the one below all in his first appearance in 2018's Immortal Hulk number 5. Number 8, Nightmare. This supervillain is basically the Freddy Krueger of the Marvel Universe, and if just knowing that isn't scary enough for you, then buckle up. Classified as a Class 3 demon able to capture a sleeping person's astral form, Nightmare's whole thing is he's able to bring their form into his realm to torture them, and the effects of that can last for hours even after they wake up. Nightmare has been a major pain for many heroes in the Marvel Universe, including Peter Parker and the Hulk, and none more so than Doctor Strange. That poor guy seems to get the biggest and baddest baddies out there, but I guess that's the price you pay when you're the most powerful sorcerer. Strange has made it clear that he makes a regular habit of casting a protection spell before he goes to sleep, so he does not have to go toe to toe with this villain. Later in this character's run, we see Nightmare growing stronger by the minute, able to access human minds through the American dream alone, and he caused these people to go on a violent rampage until he was finally stopped by Captain America and S.H.I.E.L.D. Skip ahead a little bit more and we actually see the death of this character up against Loki, in which the Trickster God used one of Iron Man's automated cars to just straight up flatten Nightmare. So, hey, at least we know he can be killed, right? What makes him so scary to me, and definitely too scary for the MCU, is he's literally the boogeyman. He's capable of wreaking havoc at any given time. His ability to terrorize the mind and attract his victims is in a never-ending horror makes him uniquely scary, and I doubt lovable Disney would ever want to cause nightmares in their viewers. Now, there is a new Doctor Strange coming out in 2022 though, so maybe we'll get to see this villain, or maybe we'll get a mention of them. For now, check him out in his first appearance in 1963's Strange Tales number 10. Number 7, Shumagorath. Older than time itself, Shumagorath is essentially Marvel's take on a Lovecraftian eldritch horror. It is an unknown cosmic entity that used to run Earth before we pesky humans came along, so as you can imagine, Shuma takes offense at this and often comes back to reclaim his old stomping ground. Doctor Strange is more often than not the only one who can actually fight this thing without completely losing his mind in the process, but as cosmic beings are known to do, it can never really be truly killed. It is considered to be the primal power of chaos and the greatest of the old ones, and aside from immeasurable strength, Shumagorath is also capable of creating powerful blasts of mystical energy that can literally wipe out planets. Although its presence is usually unexpected and unwelcome, Doctor Strange did have to summon a small part of it once during Thanos' invasion of Manhattan to wreak havoc on the city and draw attention away from themselves. Outside of our own reality, Shumagorath has invaded many other Earths such as Earth 9411 and 9997. However, it is very rare that they come out on top because there is usually a Doctor Strange or a group of heroes there to put a stop to them. This terrifying villain is a bit too scary for the MCU in my opinion because, well, I mean, just take a look at it. It is literally a massive eyeball and tentacles, just like a real Cthulhu vibe going on, and I'm not really a huge fan. We might end up seeing him in Multiverse of Madness, or even in whatever the third movie will be for Doctor Strange. A Lovecraftian Elder God would certainly be a badass final boss for Doctor Strange. Check out Shumagorath for yourself in 1973's Marvel premiere number 10, and let me know in the comments if you think an on-screen version could be on its way. Number 6, Cassandra Nova. This powerful telepath is certainly not well known among general audiences and has actually never been introduced in any of the movies whatsoever. Cassandra Nova is essentially a member of a parasitic race of psychic beings and attaches herself to Charles Xavier while he's still in the womb. She absorbed the darkest parts of his mind and basically became Charles' twin sister. Though the doctors pronounced her stillborn, Cassandra in fact survived and spent the next few decades as a growing mass of cells in a sewer wall, building a new body for herself and planning her revenge on her brother. Since she copied the DNA of Charles, this means that she is able to access the full spectrum of his powers, making her one of, if not the strongest telepath, because this means she has all the powers of Charles Xavier, meaning the ones that he has had and the ones that he might receive in the future as a result of any latent mutations. Overall, she is a dangerous enemy of the X-Men, having made an army of Sentinels murder over 16 million mutants on the island of Genosha, and that by itself is a reason she is on this list today. Check her out for yourself in 2001's new X-Men number 144, and let me know your thoughts on her in the comments below. Number 5, Vox. Maximus Boltagon, aka Vox, is an inhuman and son to two of the top geneticists at Datilid. Subjected to the DNA-altering Terrigen mist when he was an infant, Maximus peculiarly showed no outward sign of any mutagenic change. Although as he matured, he hid his developing psionic powers from the community, but was less successful in disguising his antisocial tendencies. His mental powers granted by the mutagenic effects of the Terrigen mist give him the ability to numb, override, and even get rid of a person's mind. He has the ability to induce short-term amnesia in others and the ability to exchange his consciousness with another person as well. He does seem to have a limited range though, but it is made up through variability, as he's only able to affect minds in a certain radius and only create one effect at a time. His influence generally functions while Maximus concentrates, but he has been known to leave long buried influences in his subjects as well, which he can trigger by voice command, causing a subject to carry out embedded commands, forget something, or even remember something. In the recent Death of the Inhuman storyline, Maximus is at New Arctillon when the Kree begin their campaign to get the Inhumans to join them or die. The superhuman Vox and the Kree with him are on New Arctillon and begin murdering every Inhuman they come across, old or new. Armed with all the Inhumans' abilities and no humanity whatsoever, Vox easily cuts his prey down with his powers or with his literal energy scythe. Even Maximus cannot defeat Vox as he quickly loses an arm for even making the attempt to try and do so. It was later revealed that the Kree took his body and placed it in a Vox costume where he was brainwashed to serve the Kree. When Beta Ray Bill took down Vox during his confrontation with Black Bolt, it broke the brainwashing on Maximus as something on Vox's costume teleported her way while also killing Maximus in the process. Number 4, Mad Jim Jaspers. Mentioned briefly at the beginning of our list when I was talking about the Fury, Mad Jim Jaspers is not a super well-known villain, but just because they're not well-known doesn't mean that they're not scary. He has a truly terrifying power, which is the ability to shift and twist reality however he sees fit, making him without a doubt one of the most powerful beings in the Marvel Universe, having powers beyond the cosmic entities. Couple that with the fact that he's, well, mad, and you get something out of a David Lynch nightmare that you do not want to mess with. Jaspers regularly twists the world into the nightmare hellscape he believes reality to be, and this, as you can imagine, leads to some imaginative and horrifying scenarios. According to Merlin, the 616 Jaspers is just way too powerful, stating this version of Jaspers is too powerful, too dangerous. His 238 counterpart could at least be halted even if it meant destroying his entire continuum. This one, however, is not so easily containable, and if he can't be defeated, then the Omniverse shall fall into chaos and a new hostile god shall play dice with the matter. Now, if you want to know more about the character, then check him out in his first appearance in 1983's Daredevil, number 9. Number 3, Mr. Sinister. Nathaniel Essex is the supervillain commonly associated with the X-Men known as Mr. Sinister. He is an incredibly ruthless and sadistic man who has no problems doing whatever he deems necessary to get what he wants, including, you know, mass murder. Thanks to having his genetics altered by Apocalypse, he was transformed from a regular old human into a superhuman capable of some ridiculous things like shapeshifting, telepathy, telekinesis, concussive blasts, and can't forget that he also has super strength, speed, stamina, durability, and reflexes. Sinister is also a scientific genius with expertise in the field of biology, genetics, cloning, physics, and engineering. The character is a master manipulator and planner with decades of genetic research at his command. He goes to great lengths to preserve his powers and personality through elaborate technological means, such as conditioning certain children to be his quote-unquote host in the event of his future death. Over the course of his time in comics, we have seen him go up against the likes of so many heroes and come out relatively unscathed, and that is why he is so high up on our list today. Check him out for yourself, starting with his first appearance in 1987's Uncanny X-Men number 221. Number 2, Chaos King. Amatsu Mikabashi is none other than the Chaos King, the god of evil, chaos, and the stars to the followers of the Shinto religion in Japan. He possessed the conventional abilities of one of the kami, the order of Japanese deities, such as superhuman strength, speed, durability, agility, endurance, and recuperative abilities, as well as high ability to wield some form of potent Japanese magic, a brand of sorcery that seems especially effective against the Olympian deities. His physical strength, at least in his main incarnation, is considerably less to that of like Zeus or Izanagi, and is roughly equal to that of an average kami, but Mikabashi can project energy on a scale at least rivaling that of Zeus and Izanagi as well. Like the Asgardians, the Japanese gods are extremely long-lived, but not truly immortal like the Olympians, as they tend to age at an extremely low rate upon reaching adulthood, and are 3 times denser than normal human beings. During the events of the Chaos War, we catch a glimpse of Chaos King teamed up with Necra and none other than the Grim Reaper and Abomination to fight against the other gods. He even goes as far as unleashing Carrion Crow, Eater of the Dead, to antagonize the revived X-Men members. All in all, he is brutal in terms of methods and isn't too easy on the eyes either, so check him out for yourself, starting with 2006's Thor Blood Oath number 6. And number 1, the first firmament. At the very beginning of it all, there was only one universe, the first firmament. For a long time, the first firmament was the sole being in creation until its loneliness became unbearable and it decided to create the first life in creation to give itself companions as well as servants, which it eventually came to regret. It created 2 specific types. Black servants dutifully obeyed and worshipped their creator, and then the multicolored ones had completely different values and desires as they wanted a dynamic, diverse, and continually evolving reality, where being beings lived, learned, reproduced, aged, and died in order to slowly improve themselves through evolution. Unfortunately for them, when the creations argued with their creator, they were destroyed completely. Now, one can only imagine what might happen if an entire universe were to turn evil, but this is the answer to that question, since the first firmament became the evil that many people worry about. Just imagine an evil sentient galaxy that could destroy pretty much anything with just a gesture. Absolutely terrifying and way too much for the MCU. Check it out for yourself in its first full appearance in 2017's Ultimates 2, Volume 2, Number 5.
Number 10. Grim Knight. The origin story of the Grim Knight is similar to the Batman of Prime Earth, but is warped. Instead of the Dark Knight, we know him as the Grim Knight, because this Batman is not afraid to use guns. So yes, you could say he's similar to the OG Batman from the 40s, but he is also far more brutal and ruthless. This version of Batman ended up killing Joe Chill when he was just a child. After Chill shot his parents, he stumbled away in the darkness, but Chill tripped and dropped his gun and Martha Wayne's necklace. While he searched for the necklace in the dark, a young Bruce grabbed the gun and aimed it at Chill, killing him in cold blood with tears in his eyes. This set Bruce down the path of believing that killing was the best way to deal with criminals that opposed justice. This version of Bruce was still inspired by a bat crashing through his window to become Batman, but he also shot that bat when it did. Number 9. Death of Superman. After Superman dies at the hands of Doomsday, Lois becomes depressed and jaded, believing that the world failed Clark. She ends up merging with the Eradicator, who claims it failed in its mission to resurrect the fallen Superman, and instead bonds with Lois so that she can succeed where she believes other heroes have failed, fighting on in Clark's name. However, Lois goes too far compared to Superman, killing those who oppose her, villains and heroes alike. Superman returns, but only lives long enough to express his disappointment and disgust in what Lois Lane has become before he is killed by Cyborg Superman. Super depressing story. Number 8. The Merciless. Like the Earth 12 belonging to the non-dark multiverse, on Earth -12, Batman and Wonder Woman are also in a romantic relationship together. They fight side by side in a war that threatens to engulf the entire population of Earth against the god of war, Ares. After countless have died and they're basically the only two left standing, they finally succeed, but Batman feels in order to protect the world, he should be the one to wield Ares' power. Knowing that Wonder Woman herself would not take Ares' helmet and with it his power, and that she would actually not allow Bruce to take it for fear of it corrupting him, Batman sees no other choice but to kill Diana. He takes Ares' helmet for himself and fights on, claiming to fight in honor and in memory of the fallen warrior and his love, Wonder Woman. Number 7. Blackest Night. This is a wild story wherein Sinestro never shared the powers of the White Lantern. Here, Necron, who speaks through Darkseid, attempts to obliterate the entire universe. Sinestro is both Black and White Lantern, known as the Limbo Lantern, and sees only one way to save the universe, by creating a new universe in Dove's image, by plugging her into the source. This almost works, except at the last minute their ally, Mr. Miracle's conviction wavers, and he ends up killing Dove to avoid creating and living in a world without his wife Barda. Instead, Sinestro is forced to use the only teammate he has left, Lobo, to create a new universe. Yeah. Slim pickings, I guess. The world instead is made in Lobo's image, who taps into the source, eliminating all Black Lanterns and restarting a dark and more grotesque looking world, which Sinestro remains trapped in, unable to leave due to Tempest preventing him from doing so. That sucks.
Number 6. Demon Bear. I mean, from the name alone you can probably guess why this one is scary, but just stay with me, okay? Created by a villain with a cursed knife, Demon Bear is a corrupted Apache bear spirit. He haunts the dreams of Danielle Moonstar of the New Mutants because he was actually made from her parents. In her nightmares, he tells her he killed her parents and that she's next, so in a way he's actually linked to her psionic abilities to create illusions, except his illusion is more of a demon. Like a regular old bear, Demon Bear has the vicious tendencies you would expect from a wild animal, however, there is a lot more than meets the eye. Drawing his powers from negative human emotions, Demon Bear can also teleport, transform, and corrupt human souls. He has gone up against other Marvel characters aside from the New Mutants, including Ghost Rider and Warpath. However, it was actually Psylocke who ultimately drove out the demon and saved the Spirit Bear within. He actually hangs out by her side as a companion now, so I guess he did get to redeem himself in some way. I think this character is way too scary for the MCU because he is literally an all-powerful bear that is capable of tormenting people. And not to mention he feeds off the negative emotions, so he only grows stronger the more the person doubts their abilities around him. That's just too much for one character, and I really can't see Marvel bringing him in anytime soon, so why not check him out for yourself in his first appearance in 1983's New Mutants to Tide Yourself Over until we finally get to see him in all his furry glory. Number 5. Gorr the God Butcher. Born on a planet with no name, Gorr was taught from the very beginning to always trust the gods. However, they never seemed to answer his prayers. Stricken with grief after the loss of his parents, wife, and son, Gorr completely gave up hope and renounced his faith from the gods. However, while wandering the desert, he actually encountered the god Null while he was engaged in battle with another god. With confirmation that the gods are real, Gorr was needless to say pretty mad. And when the one god asked for help, Gorr actually used a piece of Null's symbiote and created the all-black Necro Sword to kill it. From then on, he vowed to take vengeance on all the gods for ignoring his prayers, and thus began his journey as Gorr the God Butcher. Wandering around the universe, Gorr absorbs the power of every god he comes in contact with, torturing and killing along his warpath. That is until he finally meets the mighty Thor. The God Butcher storyline ranges across eons of time as Gorr absorbs the ability to time travel, and ends in an epic conclusion against 3 periods of Thor's life: Young Thor, Avengers era Thor, and obviously Old King Thor. Now I doubt Gorr will ever grace the screen in the MCU because he is just way too powerful. Equipped with the Necro Sword he carries around, he has the capability to literally slay anything that comes his way. If he was introduced much earlier on, he would have been a much bigger threat than Thanos. Also, just a man who's lost his faith and has nothing to lose is definitely not someone you want to mess with. Give his story a read for yourself, starting with his first appearance in 2013's Thor: God of Thunder number 2. Number 4. Annihilus. Known as the Living Death that walks, or the Lord of the Negative Zone, Annihilus is an insect-like creature with some truly insane power. He was exposed to an object called the Cosmic Control Rod, which extended his lifespan and gave him his powers. These powers include continuous rebirth, superhuman levels of strength, speed, durability, and stamina, and flight of course. Obsessed with protecting the rod, he did absolutely everything he could to keep it from everyone else until the Fantastic Four took it away from him. Annihilus has at various times been the ruler of the Negative Zone, controlling its inhabitants via his powerful Cosmic Control Rod. He first encountered the Fantastic Four after Reed Richards discovered how to travel to the Negative Zone from Earth. Over the years, he clashed with the Fantastic Four on many occasions, often with the group foiling his plan to invade Earth. He would later lead an enormous fleet of spaceships from the Negative Zone into the main universe, setting off the Annihilation Wave by destroying a ton of planets. The Armada was opposed by a number of cosmic heroes such as Star-Lord, Drax the Destroyer, and the Silver Surfer, and was thankfully stopped by the cosmic entity Galactus, with Nova killing Annihilus in the process. He was later reborn as an infant in the aftermath of the Annihilation storyline. But other than that, we have seen Annihilus go up against the likes of many other heroes, and he has been a worthy adversary to say the least. Now I doubt we'll see this character in the MCU anytime soon just due to their immense power and ability to literally broadcast intense fear into the others, the likes of which has even been able to shake the Hulk. It's possible that we'll see them later on once more powerful characters such as Nova and Adam Warlock are introduced, but they are too big a threat. Give their story a read for yourself, starting with 1968's Fantastic Four Annual number 6. Number 3. The Maker. Now, unlike his Earth 616 counterpart, Reed Richards is about 20 years younger, born into a completely normal family, and God, what was it? Oh yeah, he's insane. Now, I'll try not to spoil too much of the story for you because I really think it deserves a read, but I will do my best to give you just the basics. Following an explosion that left Richards presumably dead, the Fantastic Four mourned his loss, but in reality, he's actually alive and well, and he actually set off the explosion himself and was responsible for a ton of other attacks around the city. Convinced that he knows how the world should be run from now on, he is willing to do whatever he thinks is right, regardless of the consequences. Thankfully, he is stopped by a group of heroes and he is flung into the Negative Zone. But it didn't take him too long to get back though, and he easily took over most of Europe. Fast forward a little bit and we see him form the Dark Ultimates, but they were quickly defeated by the power of the Infinity Stones. Teaming up with Cabal of Earth 616, Richards was able to manipulate the Ultimates into prematurely attacking the Earth, and do I got you interested in the character? Good. I'll leave the rest of the story for you to read for yourself. What makes the Maker so terrifying is that he is so intelligent that there is really no way of defeating him, and since he has the ability to literally stretch his brain to make himself even smarter, he is always 10 steps ahead of you no matter what you do and what you think. Of course, we don't even have the regular Mr. Fantastic in the MCU yet, so even if they have been considering integrating this character's introduction is definitely far off. Give his story a read for yourself, starting with 2004's Ultimate Fantastic Four number 1, or feel free to just skip ahead to when he is the Maker by taking a look at 2011's Ultimate Comics Ultimates number 1. Number 2, the Skinless Man. If you were ever wondering why they called Wolverine Weapon X, well, Here's your answer. It's not an X, it's actually the Roman numeral for 10. Now with that in mind, meet weapon number 3, the Skinless Man. Harry Pyre used to be a barrister during the Cold War, and he was actually very good at his job thanks to his mutant power, elastic and multi-sensory skin. Designated weapon 3 by the Weapons Plus program that augmented his strength and powers, Pyre went on to do some pretty terrible things, and all of that finally caught up to him when Phantom X shot him, stole his skin, and left him for dead. Now with no skin, Pyre took revenge on Phantom X by cutting off his face, and was later recruited into the new Brotherhood of Evil Mutants while he was on the run from that. Once again though, everything seems to catch up to him because in 2013's Uncanny X-Force number 34, he meets an untimely end and he's not really been seen since. I could go into all the other horrific stuff this guy has done in the comics appearances, but do I really need to? It should be plainly obvious that there will never be an MCU version of the Skinless Man out there. He has no skin, and his whole thing is literally putting you in a similar predicament as him. That just seems to me like you've got a formula for a character that will forever be stuck in the pages of a comic book. I also understand that he is prominent in the X-Men universe, which is not necessarily the MCU, but it's fine. I'm definitely not far off when I say that there is no way they would use this character even if they had the rights to him. Check out his story for yourself in his first full appearance in 2012's Uncanny X-Force number 21. And finally, number 1, we have Arcade. Nobody really knows who or what Arcade was before his life of crime. He has given so many different accounts over the years with no evidence to prove any of them. The one that seems the most true is that he killed his father when he was 21 in order to acquire massive amounts of money, and he discovered that he really liked killing, so he became an assassin. However, he soon got really bored with that and decided to use his wealth to construct a death-themed amusement park to kill people. As a skilled killer, Arcade has been tasked with killing many heroes over the years such as Spider-Man, Ghost Rider, and many X-Men as well. But all of his attempts have ended in failure. On his 29th birthday, he learned that he was a huge laughingstock in the villain community, and this made him realize that what he'd been doing is no longer a game, and that winning from this point on is everything. Using his genius-level intellect and his vast fortune, he constructed a new Murderland and trapped 16 teen heroes in it for a month, toying with them and prodding them. However, they were eventually freed, and Arcade was last seen tied to the front of the SHIELD helicarrier as a form of torture for everything that he had done. What makes him terrifying to me is that he's all about mind games and toying with people, which basically makes him the Marvel equivalent of Saw. He knows exactly what to do and say to get people to gang up against each other, and he has the knowledge and resources to execute any plan. That is way too much power for one villain to have, especially a movie villain, so... Number 10, the Demons 3. The Demons 3 are the demon brothers that ruled the galaxy 1 billion years ago until they were banished by the Timeless Ones. Felix Faust summoned their power using a bell, a wheel, and a jar that they had created for this purpose, only to be foiled by the League. They later worked with Neron against the League, trying to bring the moon down upon Earth, and then skip ahead to the 25th century and we see the Demons 3 released from their prisons once more. And they battled the heroes of this time period only to be stopped by Zatanna's magic that was actually attached to the jar, bell, and wheel that they were imprisoned in. Skip ahead once more to the 30th century and they are once again freed and become the pawns of Mordru the Magician. They were all pretty easily defeated though, with 2 of them battling it out to their mutual obliteration, and then the superheroes are able to combine forces to overcome the surviving Ghast, who is imprisoned by Dr. Fate in the reconstructed JLA satellite. Check them out in 1962's Justice League of America, number 10. Number 9, Royal Flush Gang. Originally set up by Amos Fortune, who we will talk about just a little bit later, the Royal Flush Gang was a gang consisting of the Ace of Clubs, King of Clubs, Queen of Clubs, Jack of Clubs, and the 10 of Clubs. They committed petty thefts of valuables and technology or were hired out of their skills for others' gain, but they were stopped by the League every single time. A second gang was set up by Hector Hammond and came closer than the original gang to defeating the Justice League. After their original ace and android was destroyed, Fortune took over the gang and killed all the members of the first gang except for the Jack of Clubs. As time went on, the gang grew and eventually got to the point where Fortune introduced the heart and diamond suits as well. The face cards would still be the most senior with the role of ace usually, but not always as the muscle, either android or human. And then the 10s control the minor members or the pips. These henchmen could gain or lose pips depending on their performance, with rivalry amongst them was not too common though. Check them out for yourself to start learning more about them in 1966's Justice League of America, number 43. Number 8, the Maestro. Payne Cardine was once a musician who ended up turning to crime after he received some pretty bad reviews on his performances. Now, as somewhat of a musician myself, I can understand why that would make you upset, but like, come come on, that seems just a little bit extreme. Using music as his main motif, Cardine adopted the costumed identity of the Maestro, a criminal who left clues in the form of music for his next crimes. In 1962, Justice League of America number 16, we see him using a music gang equipped with musical instruments that compel those in earshot to dance. The Maestro tried to defeat the Justice League by encasing them in indestructible bubbles. Cardine was eventually captured by Batman and Robin, who were assisted by a professional in musicology, and he was sent to prison and his musical crime spree was stopped for good. Why not check out this musical madman for yourself, starting with his first appearance in 1962's Batman number 149. Number 7. Weapons Master. A criminal from the 120th century, Zotar the Weapons Master is a highly intelligent supervillain who is an expert in all weapons from the future and an enemy to the Justice League. He went back in time with a cache of weapons to battle the League, believing that the one to defeat them would be invincible and able to batter the Intersolar Police, due to a book written by Wonder Woman herself which seemed to indicate that he was the one who defeated the League. Obviously he was defeated and was sent back to his time period, where he went back to the drawing board and tried to figure out a weapon that would actually defeat them. Since then, he has returned to plague other incarnations of the League on several occasions, like when he tried to obtain Green Lantern's power ring, or when he was the leader of a cult that worshipped the League, although he has been defeated each time. Check him out for yourself, starting with 1980's The Brave and the Bold, number 29. Number 6. Saturna. Known as the Lord of Misrule, Saturna was an intergalactic warlord who took control of countless worlds, with few being able to oppose him. He had conquered many planets, including Moss Steel, and was nearing victory on Terra Arcana. However, he didn't realize that the two of his top lieutenants, Simon Magus and Tazala, were stealing and dealing behind his back, selling off conquered planets to a human property development firm. Needless to say, he was not too happy about that one bit. I'll admit that Saturna was a bit of a showman and spent more time honing his public image than actually focusing on subduing his conquests. He was defeated and killed by the Creature Commandos, who was eventually killed by Tazala when he was no longer of use to her. Give his story a read for yourself, starting with his first appearance in 1961's Justice League of America number 2, all the way until his death in 2000's Creature Commandos number 8. Number 5. Animal Master. Gustav was just once a regular old animal trainer who made a pretty decent living traveling the world as a circus performer. Like many other performers though, fame and fortune started to get to his head, and it got to a point where he began training his animals to commit crimes for him. Having been able to escape the cops on most heists, he began to get cocky and decided to escape by boat, and then this allowed Aquaman to enter the scene. However, he wasn't able to catch him this time around. This was both a blessing in disguise and a curse for Gustav, because although he escaped, a terrible storm hit the area and completely destroyed his boat. Presumed to be dead by everyone including Aquaman, Gustav was actually very much alive, and had found his way to a desert island where he tirelessly trained the animals he found on the island so he could enact his revenge on Aquaman. He was eventually able to lure Aquaman to his island, but he couldn't beat him, and that ended in his arrest. Check out Animal Master for yourself in his first appearance in 1959's Adventure Comics number 261. Number 4. Laren. Residing in the realm known as Dimension Aqua, Laren possesses pretty much all the powers you would expect from Aquaman, just toned down a fair amount. Long ago, he led a revolt against the Queen Mera and forced her to flee to Earth, which is kind of a good thing because that's where she met Aquaman. Laren ended up following her and was able to capture Aquaman and Aqualad and brought them back to Dimension Aqua as prisoners. Thankfully, Aquaman was able to figure out a plan of action pretty quickly, and he alongside Mera and the rest were able to escape back to Atlantis, which just solidified Laren's position as the new ruler of the Dimension Aqua. A few years later, Mera ended up returning to Dimension Aqua and had discovered that Laren had gotten rid of all of her tools and tossed them into the Great Pit. This forced her to go toe-to-toe with Laren, and she was able to overpower him, shattering his mind in the process, leaving him completely and utterly useless. If you feel like it, give this villain's story a read for yourself, starting with his first appearance in 1963's Aquaman, number 11. Number 3. Captain Demo. Although his real identity is unknown, Captain Demo is a high-tech underwater pirate whose crew specializes in using very deadly and very experimental weaponry. Demo drives a fully functioning 16th century pirate ship that somehow works perfectly underwater, and of course when you drive a 16th century ship, you have to dress the part. It's also not really explained how, but he and his crew are able to breathe perfectly underwater without the need for scuba gear or anything like that. Deciding one day to conquer Atlantis, he managed to rig the entire city to explode unless Aquaman submitted to him, to which he complied and ended up doing some truly terrible things. When he finally got the chance, Aquaman turned on Demo and knocked him out cold in a one-on-one fist fight. Toppo the Octopus also helped out, and he took out the majority of Demo's men. However, enough of them were able to band together and rescue their captain so that they could live to fight another day. Check out Captain Demo for yourself, starting with his first appearance in 1975's Adventure Comics number 441. Number 2. Scavenger. Peter Mortimer was a deep-sea diver and pirate who dubbed himself the Scavenger because, you know, he scavenges. With no real powers, he operated an advanced submersible vessel called the Scorpion Ship and plundered the seas. Hearing rumors of an alien artifact called the Time Decelerator, Mortimer traveled to Atlantis and confronted Aquaman about it because he believed that it was capable of making him immortal. He kidnapped Mera and Aqua Baby and poisoned the water in Atlantis, forcing Aquaman to help him find this new mysterious device. Funnily enough, he actually did end up finding the device, however, upon activating it, it regressed him in age until he stopped existing completely, forcing him to live in a limbo-like state for many years. He eventually was able to somehow make it back to his original age and size, and teamed up with Cobra for a while upon his return. Scavenger is later seen to have reformed and even becomes friends with Aquaman. Their last battle was over stolen cargo that turned out to be vaccines. Mortimer's conscience got the better of him and he was treated like a hero for the very first time as he helped deliver them safely. Aquaman helped him clean up his act and he even became a business owner. There's a little bit more to the story that gets just, a little bit risque, so if you're feeling up to it, I'll let you check that out for yourself. So give his story a read, starting with his first appearance in 1968's Aquaman number 37. And number 1, King Pomoxis. One of the many corrupt Atlanteans, Pomoxis was one of just the worst, conspiring to straight up eliminate Aquaman for being the chosen hero. Pomoxis summoned Aquaman back to Poseidonus under the pretext of investigating a series of bizarre explosions taking place just outside the city. When the two went to investigate, Pomoxis pushed Aquaman into the path of a spiraling vortex, sending him backwards through time like 2,500 years. Returning to Atlantis, Pomoxis assumed Aquaman's appearance and identity, and told everyone that the real Pomoxis died in the explosions. With Aquaman's reputation, he was able to do pretty much anything and everything. However, he was eventually taken down by the real Aquaman after he returned to the present alongside Aqualad. A short time later, Pomoxis conspired with a pirate named Captain Clay, and together they lured a pack of sea monsters to attack Atlantis. While Aquaman and Aqualad were distracted trying to keep the monsters away from the populated areas, Pomoxis took advantage of the situation and staged a coup against the Atlantean king Stamar. His first official act as the newly crowned king was to imprison Aquaman and Aqualad. However, that did not last long because our heroes were able to dethrone him and just take him down. Check out his 4-issue run for yourself, starting with 1962's Aquaman number 3.
Number 10, Dexstar. For those not familiar with Dexstar, get ready because this little furball might be one of my favorite lanterns, at least my favorite red lantern. Dexstar was originally named Dexter and was just your average house cat. One day, however, his owner was brutally murdered and he himself was tossed into a bag and into a river. Dexter was of course frightened and sad, but he also found within himself a fierce rage, an anger so intense that Atrocitus felt his rage and reached out to him, offering him a place among the Red Lanterns. That day, Dexter became the ferocious space kitty known as Dexstar. While he has since become his own character, originally he was very much the sidekick of his beloved mentor, Atrocitus. Number 9, Hope Taya. You might be familiar with Lex Luthor's sidekicks Mercy Graves, but did you know he also had another bodyguard and sidekick as well? Her name was Hope Taya. Hope was first introduced in Adventures of Superman issue 573. When Lex became president of the United States, however, and failed to prevent an invasion, she decided to turn against him. When he realized that Hope was the leak and had told some shady stories about him to the Daily Planet, Lex Luthor had her secretly kidnapped and imprisoned. He tortured her and lobotomized her before Superman could manage to rescue her. Number 8, Black Swan. Black Swan is Yabit Umanturu, an alien from the alternate Earth of 1365. After being manipulated by Rabba Malal, known to her as the Great Destroyer, Black Swan set out to regrow her family, carrying with her their DNA and brain scans in order to do so. As she looked for a new world to rebuild her life on, she ended up on the Earth of Reality 616, attempting to convince others to destroy their Earths in order to avoid the disaster that was the incursion of worlds. Following the events on Battleworld and the whole rebuilding of Earth 616 and the multiverse, Black Swan found herself allied with Hela, who at the time was working with Thanos. From there, she ended up joining the Black Order, which would later be reformed. Number 7, The Walrus. Does anyone remember the Wonderland Gang, or just me? This was a gang that villains Tweedledee and Tweedledum led, composed of a collection of Wonderland-inspired characters. The Walrus became one of them. Just like many of the other members of the gang, he was pretty useless as a villain. The Walrus's real name was Mo Blum, and to fight against the heroes who would oppose his leader's criminal ways, he would fight using a tusked mask that he wore on his face. He had no superpowers to speak of, just that sweet, sweet mask that, as you can expect, was not really as effective as I'm sure he'd hoped it would be. Number 6, Supergiant. Supergiant was one of the members of the Black Order that we did not get to see join the Marvel Cinematic Universe, and almost seemingly as part of her being cut out of being represented in the film, she also then died in the comics during the events of No Surrender. Not sure why everyone was hating on Supergiant. The issue of Avengers in which she died, Legacy Legacy number 680 was released in February of 2018, while Infinity War came out in April of 2018. She was a telepath who could easily unlock information or secrets within someone's mind. Perhaps she was simply too powerful for her own good, and that's what led to her being killed in the comics and kind of erased from existence in regards to the MCU. Still, I would like justice for Supergiant. Bring her back! Number 5. Triune Understanding. The Triune Understanding was an organization led by Jonathan Tremont. It was originally believed to be an organization focused on maximizing human potential, although it was later revealed to have more sinister motives. Tremont specifically used the organization and its resources to create a smear campaign to be used against the Avengers. He claimed the Avengers were intolerant of various religions and races. He also used his villainous brothers Lord Templar and Pagan in an attack against the Avengers, in which he then blamed the superhero team for all the destruction that the battle had caused. The crazy thing is, although this organization is not one of the well-known Avengers adversaries, the Triune Understanding still succeeded in getting both Thor and Captain America to leave the team for a time.
Number 4. Sons of the Serpent. Now over the years there have been a total of 7 iterations of the Sons of the Serpent, so let's make our way through all of them, shall we? This group was initially formed by General Chen, and let's just say they were all about doing some pretty awful things against non-natives of their country. The original group was disbanded by S.H.I.E.L.D. and the Avengers after they unmasked General Chen as their leader. And then the second group didn't show up until a little bit while later, but they were also quickly defeated and disbanded by the Avengers and Black Panther. Financed by J.C. Pennyworth, the third iteration was all about destroying buildings in Harlem, but the Defenders had no trouble stopping them. Head over to LA after and you'd find the fourth iteration selling drugs and weapons under the leadership of the Hate Monger. Thankfully, War Machine shut them down for good and cut off all of their suppliers as well. The fifth iteration was super into magic and mysticism and led by Serpent Man himself, however it's actually unknown if they were ever stopped, so honestly they could be practicing to this very day. The six Sons of the Serpent controlled New York's justice system for a period of time, and they would have been a much bigger threat had they not been stopped by Daredevil. And then finally, the seventh iteration of the team went back to their roots and were patrolling the American border, not letting anyone into the country unless they were a citizen. Not only that though, they were also sending some of these immigrants to Carl Malice as test subjects. Thankfully though, Captain America caught wind of this and their villainous ways were put to an end.
Number 3. Chaos King. It's kind of unfortunate what happened to the Chaos King. He actually seemed like a pretty neat villain in theory. The event that he is primarily known for is the Chaos War. Unfortunately, Chaos War took place right before the Epic Fear itself in terms of Marvel chronological print history, and it kind of became overshadowed by it. Ultimately, it also felt a lot less planned out. The Chaos King, also known as Amatsu Mikoboshi, is a cosmic entity and basically Japanese god who met his end during the events of Chaos War, where he was defeated. During Chaos War, the Chaos King used his powers to reverse the effects of life and death, meaning the dead heroes came back to life, while those who had been alive were now deceased instead. As a Japanese kami, he has godlike powers, making him insanely durable and strong, while also having supernatural abilities as well. The Chaos King's powers were more dark in origin though, when it came to their magic type.
Number 2. The Circus of Crime. Now much like the Sons of the Serpent, the Circus of Crime has gone through many iterations, but let's just focus on the modern eras this time. Currently composed of the Ringmaster aka Maynard Tybalt, Bruto the Strongman, Clown, Tina the Fat Lady, and the Fire Eater, the Circus of Crime is kind of exactly what you'd expect after hearing their name. A circus that does crime. They followed a general formula while committing their crimes. They would give a performance before a large audience, then at some point, the Ringmaster would use the powerful mind control device concealed in his hat to put the audience into a trance. The circus members would then rob the audience, who wouldn't remember anything about the thefts when the Ringmaster released them from the trance, and then the performance would just continue. They clashed with superheroes on a pretty regular basis, the most notable being the Hulk, Spider-Man, and of course the Avengers. Funnily enough though, one time Matt Murdock himself offered to defend them in court after having helped defeat them alongside Spider-Man. Crazy.
Number 1. Wrecking Crew. The Wrecking Crew is a villainous entourage who appear as blue-collar sort of construction workers. In reality, they are Dirk Garthwaite, who was originally Wrecker, and his team comprised of Thunderbell, aka Elliot Franklin, previously a physicist, Bulldozer, previously a military sergeant known as Henry Camp, Pile Driver, aka Brian Kaluski, who used to be a farmer. They received their powers when they all came into contact with the crowbar as it was struck by some kind of magical lightning. They have attempted to take hold of the Avengers Mansion on more than one occasion, teaming up with the Masters of Evil during one of their attempts and kidnapping Misty Knight and using her to control Iron Fist another time. They are usually handily defeated by the Avengers when they go up against the team, however. It seems that magical construction equipment and mystical abilities which are tied to that equipment is not really enough to defeat the Avengers, I guess.
Number 10. The Fury. Generally depicted as an enemy of Captain Britain and the X-Men, the Fury is a deadly android built by the reality-manipulating psychic Mad Jim Jaspers of the parallel timeline of Earth 238 to destroy all superhumans but himself. Since it's not a living being, it doesn't possess any superpowers. However, it's ridiculously strong, can generate lethal energy blasts, is capable of adapting to any situation, and can regenerate its mechanical body at will. Most of the Fury's enemies on Earth 238 were based on British comic book characters from the 1950s to the 1970s. After succeeding in its mission, the Fury was deactivated until Captain Britain and his elf sidekick Jackdaw were sent to Earth 238 by the Captain's mythic mentor Merlin. The status crew and forces working for the country's oppressive regime reactivate the Fury and send it to kill the hero, and it murdered Jackdaw and then killed Captain Britain. After a little bit, it traveled to Earth 616 and continued killing many of Captain Britain's allies until it was eventually taken down and buried in the cave system of Captain Britain's mansion, where it absorbed the circuitry of the computer and repaired itself. There's a bit more to its story, but hey, I don't want to spoil it all for you guys, so give it a read for yourself, starting with 1982's Marvel Superheroes UK, number 387. Number 9. Sugar Man. One of the most terrifying looking villains on our list today is Sugar Man, the villain with a terrifyingly powerful tongue, size and mass alteration abilities, and highly advanced regeneration ability. Originally, he ran the human work camps in the Pacific Northwest and was a geneticist with a lab around Niagara Falls, where he regularly tormented his captives. Magneto needed a mutant with chrono variant powers, aka time traveling powers, in order to go back in time to restore reality's proper order before Charles Xavier's death, and Ileana Rasputin was revealed to be one of the few around, so Colossus and Generation Next were sent to retrieve her. Sugar Man held up pretty well against them, only almost dying like 3 times. He eventually hitched a ride to the Apocalypse Citadel and was transported from his native Earth of 295 to Earth 616, where he operated with Genosha to help the Magistrates create a mutant captive army that could take over the world. So not only is he scary looking, he is also scary smart. Can't imagine them sticking him into any X-Men movie, let alone an MCU movie anytime soon, so in the meantime, check him out in comic form, starting with his first appearance in 1995's Generation Next, number 2. Number 8. Supergiant. Although the other members of the Black Order made an appearance in the MCU, one member was unfortunately shafted, and that is none other than Supergiant, the mentally unstable omnipath and telepathic parasite who seeks out intellect and devours it. In the comics, Supergiant had absolutely no issues with taking out the Jean Grey School and the X-Men associated with it. Later on, when the Black Order seized Wakanda, Supergiant was left in control of Black Bolt, whom she would mentally order to activate the bombs the Illuminati hid in Wakanda's necropolis. Upon activating the bomb, Supergiant was faced by Maximus, who had the trigger, and Maximus triggered the bomb, but also used Lockjaw to transport Supergiant along with the bomb to a distant uninhabited planet, where she perished in the explosion of the bomb, although she did later return as a mental projection and even attempted to take over the body of Captain Glory, so she could continue wreaking havoc on the world. Thankfully though, she was eventually taken out for good by the Lethal Legion while trying to take over Thor's mind. Check her out for yourself, starting with her first appearance in 2013's Infinity, number 1. Number 7. Kull Borson. Born the older brother of Odin, Kull Borson, aka Serpent, is the god of fear in the Asgardian world. He possesses all the conventional attributes of an Asgardian god. However, as the son of Bor, many of these attributes are significantly better than those possessed by the majority of his race. He possesses enough superhuman strength to shatter Captain America's shield with his bare hands, has the ability to manipulate magic as he's able to teletransport, revive the dead, and transform himself into a giant serpent. And as the god of fear, he could consume the fear of other people to empower himself, making him stronger and even younger in the process. During the Fear Itself storyline, Kull created and gathered his Worthy in order to spread chaos across the entire world. This group being made up of Juggernaut as Kurth, Breaker of Stone, Hulk as Null, Breaker of Worlds, Atuma as Nurkod, Breaker of Oceans, Titania as Skirn, Breaker of Men, Grey Gargoyle as Mok, Breaker of Faith, Absorbing Man as Greythoth, Breaker of Wills, and Thing as Angrier, Breaker of Souls. Thor was eventually able to kill him in the storyline after some intense battles, but not without losing his own life in the process. Obviously though, both characters do come back to life just a little bit later on. However, Kull meets his permanent end in 2019's Thor Volume 5 number 13. Want to know what led up to that point? Well, check out this whole story for yourself, starting with 2011's Fear Itself, number 1.
Number 6. The Devastator. The Devastator is another twisted version of Bruce Wayne who is pushed too far. For mysterious reasons that remain unknown, the Superman of the Devastator's dark universe randomly underwent a change that caused him to go on a full-out rampage, killing everyone. Batman was one of the last few left to try and stop him, attempting to do so with a kryptonite spear. After Superman blasts off Batman's arm, however, he is driven to desperate measures. Batman is forced to activate his own version of the Doomsday virus, which takes over his body and transforms him into a doomsday-like creature, becoming the Devastator. Although he fails in saving his world, he succeeds in killing the Superman of his universe, before heading out to try and save other alternate Earths by infecting them with the virus in order to protect them from their world Superman. Although, you know, they never really asked for that, so it's pretty horrifying. Number 5. Infinite Crisis. In the dark multiverse, Ted Kord is not killed by Maxwell Lord. Instead, Ted pretends to agree to join Lord in cleaning house when it comes to his plans for Checkmate, but he betrays Lord and kills him. Brother Eye threatens to push on with the OMAC project, but Kord offers that he could help to guide Brother Eye and take Maxwell Lord's place, help Brother Eye save and protect the planet as Lord had promised Brother would. Ted ends up attempting to recruit Booster Gold to help him with Brother Eye, but Booster isn't so sure about his friend's plan. In the end, he teams up with Superboy Prime, who has been plotting with Alexander Luthor of Earth 3 to create a perfect world in the main continuity, but Luthor betrays him. Superboy and Blue Beetle, who's now directly connected to the Brother Eye, end up teaming up. They end up attempting to take out 50% of Earth's superhero population as recommended by Brother Eye, but in the end they're forced to eliminate or assimilate all of the superhero populace, who obviously are like, no, you can't just kill us, with Ted Kord sacrificing his humanity in order to completely demolish all of that superhero threat. Number 4. The Murder Machine. After the death of Alfred, Batman in his grief seeks to create an AI in Alfred's image and employs the help of Cyborg. Bruce calls the project the Alfred Protocol. Alfred Protocol is also programmed to act as Bruce's infallible bodyguard, and it's this programming which causes everything to go sideways. The Alfred Protocol spreads, taking out every villain, every criminal he deems a threat to Bruce Wayne's life. However, it doesn't end there. The Alfred Protocol also realizes in order to protect Bruce, it also needs to change him, protect him from himself and his emotions by eradicating them, starting with his fear. This change infects and transforms Batman into a cyborg version of himself known as the Murder Machine, who then goes about killing everyone, determining that everyone and his attachment to them is a weakness. Number 3. The Batman Who Laughs. This dark multiverse story was so terrifying it got its own series. The Batman Who Laughs actually got a miniseries to explain just how his story went down. By now we all should mostly know it, but if you haven't read it, it's chilling and thrilling and it's definitely worth a read. In the story, it's explained how Batman became corrupted by Joker venom when he ended up losing control and killing the Joker, triggered by being forced to watch the Joker kill children's parents in front of them before exposing them to Joker venom and driving them insane. When Batman killed Joker, this exposed him to Joker venom, which was released with the Joker's dying breath from his heart. Batman was then driven insane by the venom, becoming a warped Joker-Batman hybrid, and set out killing everyone, even the members of the Bat family, only allowing Damian Wayne to be converted with the venom and join him. He also later confessed that Alfred was one of the last people to try and stop him by blowing him up, but he managed to thwart and capture Alfred and break him, turning him into his own loyal servant once more. Number 2. The Judas Contract. So as bad as the Judas Contract storyline in the main continuity was for the Teen Titans, apparently its consequences could have been a lot more horrific and a lot worse. In this story, Tara finds herself inspired to become her own murderous villain all her own after one of Dick Grayson's inspirational chats. Great job, Dick. Grayson thinks that he's inspired Tara to become her own person separate from Geoforce's shadow though, not Deathstroke's shadow, as he does not know yet that Tara is actually a spy. She ends up unlocking her potential as a result, becoming more powerful than ever, taking up the name Gaia. She not only tears Slade Wilson apart, literally, but she kills the entire team of Teen Titans, even poor Beast Boy, no! And she also kills the entire Justice League. Number 1. Nightfall. If you haven't read the Tales from the Dark Multiverse, you obviously need to, as they are all pretty crazy, and honestly, the scariest tale can be found in this first one issue. This is a spooky retelling of the Batman story Nightfall. When Bruce has his back broken, he passes the mantle of Batman onto Jean-Paul Valley, aka Azrael. But when he returns, Azrael refuses to give up the mantle. Instead of Bruce Wayne and the Bat family winning it back as they did in the main continuity, this time around Bruce fails. He instead is held captive and tortured for 30 years by Azrael, who rules Gotham with a bloody and merciless iron fist as Saint Batman. Bruce eventually escapes with the help of Bane's son, Torn, born, and his mother, Lady Shiva. But his time in imprisonment, where he was slowly dissected, has changed Bruce, and no longer is he the man and hero we once knew.
Number 10. Styx. Starting off the list today with a pretty terrifying mutant. Jacob Acorn was once a homeless man who was approached on the street by a medical researcher to participate in an experiment involving some new pharmaceuticals, and he obviously accepted because the pay was good and there were very few risks. It was revealed that during the trial, the researcher had actually lied about what he was looking into. The trial was about exploring whether the human body could develop an immunity to cancer, so Jacob was injected with a mutated cancer compound. Alongside developing an immunity to the disease, he also became a living cancer cell with the ability to kill organic matter just by touching it. However, his mind was also tainted and he took up the name Styx after the river Styx. Jacob quickly developed an affinity for death, finding it was the only thing that could bring him happiness, and alongside Gerald Stone, the two made a deadly mercenary duo. Now, I highly doubt that Marvel will ever consider bringing this baddie into the MCU because his origins are way too dark for good old Disney, plus he is a ruthless killer who does it for nothing more than just pleasure. So, for now, check him out in comic book form in his first appearance in 1988's Amazing Spider-Man number 309. Number 9. Bullseye. Known as the Mercenary of Mystery, Lester, insert name last year, might not have any powers, but that by no means makes him any less terrifying. Lester has always been a master marksman, and before his mercenary career, he tried his hand at Major League Baseball, but quickly grew bored with it because he was constantly pitching perfect games. However, he quickly found his true calling as a special operative of the United States National Security Agency. Not long after, he became a freelance merc because he found too much joy in killing his targets with his signature killing method: throwing things. Gaining a reputation in New York City, Bullseye was hired to take down Matt Murdock, but ultimately failed every time as he was stopped by, Daredevil. Later on, we see him go up against the likes of the Punisher and Spider-Man and walk away to tell the tale, which is quite the feat for someone with no powers. The worst thing this villain ever did, in my opinion at least, was kill not one, but two of Daredevil's girlfriends, Elektra and Karen Page. This led to his demise at the hands of Daredevil, of course, because I can't imagine anyone who wouldn't want revenge after that. I doubt we'll ever see Bullseye in the MCU because 1, we already have a master marksman in the form of Hawkeye, and 2, his methods of torture and his sadistic nature are utterly terrifying, and putting that on the big screen would be too much in my opinion. Check out this character for yourself and let me know what you think, starting with his first appearance in 1976's Daredevil number 131. Number 8. Blackheart. A slightly lesser known villain and utterly terrifying son of the demon Mephisto. Usually depicted as an enemy of Ghost Rider, this all-powerful demon is one of the most powerful in the Marvel Universe and possesses a vast array of magical powers, including telekinesis, telepathy, the ability to travel dimensions, and of course, the ability to project energy blasts out of his hands. Under his father's tutelage, Blackheart explored and learned everything about being evil in nature and has attempted to corrupt many of our favorite heroes, such as Ghost Rider, Spider-Man, and Wolverine. Blackheart is the leader of the Spirits of Vengeance, a group that was created to oppose the Ghost Rider, and with their help he caused some serious damage in the Marvel Universe. Skip ahead a bit and we see Blackheart with some newly acquired demonic powers attempting to take over the Earth by himself. Thankfully, this was stopped by the Avengers and Spider-Man, but not before he could rip out the Falcon's soul and send it to hell. I feel Blackheart is way too scary for the MCU because not only is he the son of Mephisto, a demon so powerful we've only ever heard of him in the MCU, he is the embodiment of evil itself with so many powers making him a ginormous threat. Imagine him getting introduced alongside Mephisto. I mean, any fight against the two would be over in the blink of an eye. Give Blackheart's origin a read for yourself, starting with 1989's Daredevil number 270, and let me know if you think he could ever make it on the big screen one day in the comments below. Number 7. Galactus. Another villain that has been off limits to the MCU for quite some time thanks to his ties to the Fantastic Four, which has made so many fans around the world fear they would never see him on the big screen. Galactus is the sole survivor of the 6th incarnation of the multiverse. Originally, Galactus was a humanoid named Galan, born in the previous incarnation of Earth 616 on the planet Ta, a paradise-like world whose civilization is said to have been the most advanced of any known universes at the time. However, the 6th Infinity and all its universes were in their final stages of collapse due to the multiversal renewal cycle, being consumed by the abstract entity known as the Black Winter. Fast forward a bit to him becoming a cosmic entity. Galactus possesses almost limitless cosmic power that gives him a vast array of powers that would take me forever to list off for you guys. It is actually ridiculous. With his insatiable hunger for energy and his heralds of Galactus by his side, the almighty being is an almost unstoppable force capable of pretty much anything. Like, seriously, he's not called the Devourer of Worlds and the God of Oblivion for nothing. Do I really need to explain why Galactus probably won't appear in the MCU? I mean, at least anytime soon. The dude eats planets, and as it stands right now, there aren't many heroes in the MCU that can help take down such a big threat. It would be super cool, and I would honestly freak if I ever saw him in a movie one day, but it is so unlikely right now just due to his sheer power and presence. Check out Galactus for yourself in his first appearance in 1966's Fantastic Four number 48.
Number 6. James Gordon Jr. He might not be on Mr. Mixie's level in terms of his power set, but James Gordon Jr. is one terrifying and creepy villain. As his name implies, he is related to Commissioner Gordon and is in fact his son. Surprisingly, James is not like his dad and grows up instead to become a psychotic serial killer, exhibiting early warning signs from a young age that there is something very wrong with him. He used to pick apart and torture animals and was suspected as being involved in the disappearance of one of Barbara's friends, Bess Keller, though nothing was ever proven. He ends up returning to Gotham and is revealed to be a full-out serial killer who enjoys torturing his victims to death in Black Mirror. Later on, he ends up joining the Suicide Squad and becomes the team's strategy analyzer. Man, I would not want to work with James Gordon Jr. on the Suicide Squad. I'd be like, ugh. No thanks. Number 5. Papa Midnight. Papa Midnight is a villain to John Constantine for the most part. Sometimes he's an ally, but more often he's not, as the man is obsessed with power and is a pretty bad dude. Papa Midnight grew up in Trenchtown, Jamaica. Born Linton Midnight, from a young age he became inspired by tales of dark magic that his parents had told him. He betrayed a group of slaves, conning them into believing that they would be protected if they rebelled, which led to their deaths, and later went on to sell his sister's soul into demon slavery, so that he could achieve more power for himself through using her soul as a barter chip, selling it to the demons of hell. Ooh. Considering how violent and insidious Papa Midnight is, we likely won't be seeing him in the DCEU, although he has managed to make an appearance in the CW Arrowverse, which is pretty impressive. Number 4. Crib. How does one even make a villain like Crib in the DCEU, just from a visual standpoint? Like, ooh, that'd be a lot of effects, I think. Crib is a member of the Sinestro Corps. She is described as being an alien hag and is 100% something out of a nightmare. Lots of Baba Yaga vibes here as well. However, instead of being associated with eating children, as Baba Yaga sometimes is, Crib's purpose is to kidnap the newly born children of Green Lanterns who are also parents. Crib will even go to the lengths of giving her pregnant victims 4 cesareans in order to secure their children. Ugh. She keeps the kidnapped newborns in her hunchback, which looks like a creepy bone crib, and promptly kills the parents of any children whom she has taken away. What's more disturbing is it's never explained why Crib has this compulsion. It's just something she feels inspired to do. I guess she doesn't think Green Lanterns make for great parents? She's like, I'll be a way better parent to these babies with my weird bone crib. Super qualified. Number 3. Dollmaker. Dollmaker has a horrific origin, which makes it hard to introduce him without going full horror film mode. When Barton Mathis was young, he would go camping with his father, who it turns out was a serial killer. While camping, Barton would not only witness his father kill people, but also commit acts of cannibalism. He also saw his father killed when apprehended by the police. Years later, Mathis would grow up to be a gifted but deranged surgeon who was obsessed with using his victims' body parts to craft dolls. He wears a mask made of human skin and was the one who helped Joker to remove his face during the lead up to the death of the family storyline. Number 2. A Black Lantern Corps. One of the most terrifying villain groups, both appearance-wise and in terms of their threat level, is the Black Lantern Corps. Of course, this would be a hard supervillain group to introduce, being that we'd likely need Green Lanterns to be on the scene to help explain, well, just who the Black Lantern Corps are and why we should care about them. After all, you can't defeat the Black Lantern Corps anyways without the entire emotional spectrum of lanterns assembled to help create that White Lantern power. This threat might also just be too huge and horrific to make an appearance due to the sheer size of their numbers. In the Blackest Night storyline, they were like an overwhelmingly sized zombie apocalypse level of threat, killing heroes and resurrecting them to join their deadly ranks. Number 1. Batman Who Laughs. It might be a little too confusing for the DCEU to introduce the Batman Who Laughs, as that would mean they'd likely have to involve the Dark Multiverse somewhere in their films, and the Dark Multiverse is likely too dark even for DC to make that happen on the big screen. The Batman Who Laughs is an alternate version of Batman who was infected by Joker venom after being pushed too far by the villain, causing him to lash out and kill the Joker, snapping his neck. This caused Batman to become infected, driving him insane and causing him to take down his own world's Justice League and kill his own Bat family, save for Damian Wayne, who he convinced to join him. He's one of the biggest bads in DC's current storylines.
Number 10. Mr. Bloom. The concept of darkness is one that is intrinsically tied to Batman. I mean, everyone should come to expect it from a character referred to as the Dark Knight. So it only makes sense to put the character up against the opposite of darkness, light, and that is where Mr. Bloom comes to play. His past, as well as his motives, remain a mystery to this day, but in no way does that mean he didn't leave a huge impact on Gotham City. With the ability to bestow powers onto any other human being at the cost of shortening that individual's life, Mr. Bloom provided these quote-unquote seeds to a select few, and crime blossomed and grew like a weed from the lowest reaches of Gotham City. Not only could he bestow powers onto others through his seeds though, he also had some powers of his own, including mechakinesis, pyrokinesis, cryokinesis, science alteration, and of course, superhuman strength and agility. Check him out for yourself, starting with his first appearance in 2015's Batman Volume 2, all the way until his death in 2016's Batman Volume 2, number 50. Number 9. Black Spider. When Eric Needham was a young lad, he unfortunately became addicted to drugs and turned to a life of crime in order to fuel that addiction. He raided and robbed his father's liquor store and actually killed his old man in the process, which landed him in jail, where he kicked that nasty drug habit and took up a life of fighting the war on drugs. Donning a costume, he became a self-styled vigilante and began killing those suspected of dealing any sort of drugs. Now in his mind, Batman and him had a common enemy and they should have been allies, but the Dark Knight thought differently due to Needham's tendency to, kill. Batman interfered with his plans many times, and that led to Needham turning to a life of crime instead, teaming up with some of the other villains in order to get revenge on Batman. During his crusade, Needham's wife and son were killed by a drug lord who had discovered the Black Spider's identity, and in a rage, the Spider prepared for one final assault. After being shot multiple times, Needham invaded the drug lord's headquarters and detonated explosives strapped to his back, killing the drug dealers in the process. Give his story a read for yourself, starting with 1976's Detective Comics number 463. Number 8. The Black and White Bandit. Once a successful artist, Roscoe Chiara was commissioned to paint a portrait of Windsor Munzell, the head of a chemical corporation. His company had created some new pigments specifically for painting, however, Chiara did not know that the paints were untested, and began to have these serious headaches. On the final end of painting, Chiara fell asleep and awoke to a colorless sunrise, because he had gone completely colorblind as a result of the pigments. To get his revenge, he became the Black and White Bandit and began a campaign against Munsell, stealing various pieces of art from his collection and his museum. He doesn't have any powers per se, but he is a master of disguise, as he has been seen as a blind man and a nun, and he is also a getaway master thanks to his zebra. It didn't take long for Batman to catch wind of what was going on, and after 2 encounters, he defeated the Black and White Bandit with only a false advertisement and just a punch to the nose. He hasn't really been seen since, but it's presumed that he is reformed or he's either still in jail. We're not 100% sure. Check him out in 2001's Batman Gotham Knights, number 12. Number 7. Amygdala. Prone to fits of homicidal rage, Aaron Helsinger was put in the care of Arkham Asylum and had his amygdala cluster removed, in hopes of curing his psychotic episodes. It actually ended up doing the exact opposite though, and Aaron became even more angry than before. During his time at Arkham, Aaron became a pawn of Jeremiah Arkham and was used to attack Batman many times to try and break his spirits, but it's Batman, so that didn't really happen. A short time later, Bane orchestrated a massive breakout at Arkham Asylum, and all of the patients, including Amygdala, were freed, and he teamed up with the Ventriloquist to wreak some havoc on Gotham City. It didn't take long for Batman to take down Amygdala and arrest him, sending him to Blackgate Penitentiary, where he became the star member of the prison softball team. He was eventually released and actually lived in the same apartment building as Dick Grayson for a while, all until Blockbuster blew up the entire apartment complex. Check out Amygdala for yourself, starting with his first appearance in 1992's Batman, Shadow of the Bat, number 3. Number 6. Merrymaker. Dr. Byron Meredith was a crazed doctor that worked at Arkham Asylum who used pretty interesting methods to treat and rehabilitate his patients, his favorite being torture. Byron was one of the few doctors who could actually tolerate the Joker, and he ended up becoming obsessed with him and just studied him endlessly until he was fired and went into a solo practice. Eventually creating the costume for the Merrymaker, Meredith created that role so that he could lead his 4 new Joker-obsessed patients into a life of crime. Meredith's plan was to create this uncanny society so that the 4 would do his bidding. While the Joker-themed criminals attacked civilians, Meredith would sneak into a nearby building where one of his enemies, either his ex-wife, her lawyer, etc. would be, and this way he could easily perform a kill, while the members of the League of Smiles would attract Batman and the GCPD's attention. Check the Merrymaker and the League of Smiles out for yourself in 2013's Detective Comics Volume 2, number 16.
Number 5. Master Jailer. The Master Jailer, aka Death Trap, worked for Star Labs in creating cells for superpowered individuals. He is incredibly smart and was asked to try and figure out a way to hold Superman in the cell, but proved he couldn't do it. That didn't stop his obsession with trying to figure out how he could one day trap the Man of Steel in one of his cells, though. He found out Superman's identity, Clark Kent, and wanted to try and go after his friends as a way to get him to cooperate. He also teamed up with some of Superman's longtime foes, but he was never able to fully capture the Man of Steel like he always wanted. Number 4. Atomic Skull. So Atomic Skull was created back in the 1970s and has faced Superman numerous times. So, basically, Joseph Martin got hit by a gene bomb and became Atomic Skull. His powers include super strength, gives off huge amounts of radiation, and has a flaming radiation type skull for his head. Now, as scary as this guy is, these powers definitely took their toll on Joseph as he started getting brain damage. The damage sort of led to Joseph to change his persona to Atomic Skull. He is known to be quite erratic and can be quite violent due to some hallucinations. Number 3. Cancer. This is definitely an interesting villain, and one for sure I definitely had not heard of at all. So somewhere down the line, Superman developed cancerous cells. When they removed the actual cells from Superman's body, what do? What do you know? We got our villain Cancer. Yes, he came to life from the removal of these cancerous cells in Superman's body. Since he came from Superman, he has most of Superman's powers, as well as being able to completely destroy a human body with just a touch from him. Since he is connected to Superman, he has weird issues about him being his father or whatnot. So, it's a little bit strange. Number 2, Amazing Grace. Amazing Grace was created in the 1980s and has the power of mind control, and with that power, she can manipulate others. Amazing Grace works with a villain known as Darkseid as his agent. So she basically lives amongst the people of Apokolips and tries to root out who are the most unloyal to him and who would betray him in an instance. She finds these people and basically betrays them once they show their true colors. She has done this with Superman in a sense, by luring him in to save her when really she did not need saving at all. It was just a ploy to manipulate him and to make him believe that he was Darkseid's son, which he actually believed. In the end, Orion, Darkseid's true son, who they were waging war on, used the Mother Box to give Superman his mind back. Number 1, Super Menace. Super Menace is definitely one of the most out there villains that you probably haven't heard of. The origin of Super Menace is that when Superman got sent to Earth in a spaceship from Krypton, his spaceship collided with another alien spaceship, which was Super Menace's. What happened from that collision was Superman's spaceship got copied and duplicated into this other one, creating the persona Super Menace. He landed with parents that definitely were no Martha or Jonathan Kent, and instead of growing up loved, he grew up in a not-so-good household where he ultimately became a villain.
Number 10. Apocalypse. While you likely know Apocalypse, who has been in many mutant-themed comics as well as animated series and even an X-Men film, you might not recall the time that Thor and Apocalypse faced one another. That's right, these two have beef, and it actually goes way back. We learned about their first fight in a flashback in Rick Remender's Uncanny Avengers issue number 6. Here we learn that the two came to blows more than 1,000 years in the past, after Apocalypse had learned that Thor would be the one to stop him in the future. Apocalypse tracks down a younger Thor, who is not yet worthy of Mjolnir, and instead wields his axe known as Jarnbjorn. Unsurprisingly, during this first fight, Thor would be defeated by Apocalypse and was forced to retreat. But this would not be the end of their feud for the two enemies, and they would of course come to blows again later on in their lives, as was predicted. Number 9. Mangog. Mangog is a villain who embodies and carries within itself the rage of their entire race, which was destroyed by Odin. We don't really know why Odin and Asgard decided to eliminate this race of beings, but they did. And so Mangog came to existence as the physical manifestation of that race's hatred towards all things Asgardian. This hate obviously extended to Thor. This has prompted the two to clash over the years. Oftentimes Mangog is too strong to be defeated in battle, however the being feeds off of psychic energies, and if one can cut it off from its source of hatred, which fuels Mangog, it could easily be defeated. Number 8. Gladiator. Gladiator always tends to show up to fight Thor in the most random stories. One such story even sees him taking on the all-new Thor, Jane Foster's Thor, when the Shi'ar gods decide they would like to prove their worth by defeating her in the Challenge of the Gods. In order to get her to compete, they decide to send the Imperial Guard, Gladiator included, to kidnap her. The Imperial Guard fought against the Asgardians but were defeated. In the end, Gladiator did decide to team up with Thor to take down the Shi'ar gods, who kinda were taking out their wrath on the Shi'ar people. This led to Quentin Quire becoming the new god of Shi'ar, which is, yeah, pretty random. random. Random stories like this where Gladiator would be pulled into strange conflicts with Thor, Jane Foster, or Thor Odinson appear to be a recurring thing in the comics. Number 7. Tomorrow Man. Speaking of weird storylines involving conflict between Gladiator and Thor, Archer Zarko was also involved in one such similar conflict. Zarko is known as the Tomorrow Man, an evil scientist from the future who first came into conflict with Thor when he traveled to the past in order to more easily acquire a nuclear bomb. This prompted Thor himself to time travel in order to pursue Tomorrow Man. Later on, Zarko would also recruit Gladiator from an alternate future to fight and defeat Thor, speaking of that feud that those two had previously. Number 6. Ragnarok. For those who cannot see the sometimes dramatic similarities between the superhero genre and soap operas, by the way, this is one of them. Ragnarok is Thor's evil clone. He was created using a strand of Thor's hair that Iron Man had found. Or so Tony claims. I definitely think he was pulling out strands of Thor's hair while he slept, or just pulled some out of his hairbrush super sneakily. But no, the story is he just found a hair of Thor's and decided to keep it, just in case. In case of what, Tony? In case of what? This of course later led to the creation of Ragnarok and the use of him during the events of the First Civil War, when Thor would not join with Iron Man and Stark decided to use this one hair he happened to be saving to create a clone of Thor to basically rally and inspire the troops. Ragnarok would appear to perish at the hands of Hercules, but would later return once more and even join Norman Osborn's Dark Avengers during the events of Dark Reign.
Number 5. Amos Fortune. A persistent villain to say the least, this Justice League baddie used several luck-based ploys like the Royal Flush Gang, the Luck League, and the Tarot Gang to get ahead. As a kid, Amos was the leader of a gang of juvenile delinquents, and then as an adult he became obsessed with luck, both good and bad, and discovered the existence of luck glands that dictate how a person's luck will run. After learning how to control these luck glands to manipulate his luck, he gathered his old gang and created the original Royal Flush Gang, who battled the Justice League on multiple occasions. Fortune first met the Justice League while trying to remove their good luck, but he was quickly defeated. He later set up the Royal Flush Gang once again, making major profits by working with Roulette and her gambling operations. After the Justice League foiled his operation, Fortune managed to get away pretty easily as he escaped to a riverboat on the Mississippi, where he was then shot at close range by a widow of a discarded card, the Two of Clubs. Check out his story starting with 1961's Justice League of America, number 6. Number 4. Epoch, Lord of Time. A powerful being from the year 3786, Epoch the Lord of Time goes head to head with the Justice League of America using his Chrono Cube to peel back the 4th dimensional veil of time. Since his initial defeat by the JLA, this fugitive from the future learned how to move laterally and diagonally through history, accessing armies and weapons spanning across millions of years. His greatest desire was to conquer space and time, and to make sure his bid to rule all reality was successful, he sought out to eliminate the Justice League's ancestors, erasing them completely from existence, which he was more than capable of doing. At some point, the Lord of Time created a frozen moment in history called Time Point, and he eventually evolved into the being known as Epoch, who wanted to master the time stream, changing events to grant him power. Epoch seemingly died in the JLA Wildcats crossover, however he did return once again as the Lord of Time in the Brave and the Bold series. Give his story a read starting with 1962's Justice League of America, number 10. Number 3. The Key. No one knows the real name of this villain, but we do know that he was originally a chemist with Intergang, obsessed with unlocking the secrets of the physical world and the human mind. To this end, he has augmented himself with chemical cocktails, boosting his baseline cognitive abilities into the superhuman range. A common opponent of the members of the Justice League of America, the Key will never be satisfied until he has picked the contents of their minds apart and cleared a path to total global domination. Although all his attempts to take down the JLA failed, that never stopped him from trying. At one point, he manages to infiltrate the JLA's headquarters and traps the team in a fantasy realm of their own creation, intending to siphon off all of the energies of their inevitable victory in order to increase his power. He almost succeeds if it were not for the intervention of Connor Hawke, who beams up to the JLA headquarters while the Key is present due to a pre-arranged meeting to discuss him becoming a member of the League. He eventually returns to fight the Batman, attempting to provoke the Dark Knight into murdering him so he could escape life itself, but the plan proves unsuccessful. There's a whole lot more to this character, so why not check him out for yourself, starting with 1965 Justice League of America, number 41. Number 2. The Unimaginable. A being of immeasurable power that roamed the universe wielding its might for its own amusement. Bored with its existence, the Unimaginable left its native planet and traveled through space, exploring several other worlds and gathering various life forms along the way. Arriving on Earth, it saw the JLA in action and decided that it wanted to join the team. However, the Justice League refused the Unimaginable's demands, and the Unimaginable attacked, first with several of the alien creatures that had gathered, then in the body of one of them. The JLA defeated the Unimaginable both times and imprisoned it. Years later, the Unimaginable returned in outer space, battling the Green Lantern named Aaliyah, whom it had previously encountered and just wanted some revenge on. The Daxamite hero Valor saved Aaliyah and seemingly disintegrated the Unimaginable with a burst of laser vision. That was in the end though, because after being captured by LexCorp, it was contained in a chamber called Lockdown 6. The Unimaginable's capsule attracted the attention of Darkseid and the Akarans, the former wanting its power while the latter saw the dangers of it. The Unimaginable was freed from its prison, and its host Dr. Bendorian sought to transfer its energy to a new host, in which it was to be Maximum, who had been engineered by LexCorp to serve such a purpose. The Unimaginable succeeded, and Maximum inherited the power of a god. Have I caught your interest? Good. Check out this powerful energy being for yourself in 1966's Justice League of America number 42. Number 1. Shaggy Man. Created by Professor Andrew Zargarian, the Shaggy Man is a synthetic being that proved time and time again that it was pretty much unstoppable, as it was capable of regenerating its destroyed body parts and was also just ridiculously strong. To defeat the virtually immortal Shaggy, the original Justice League of America obviously created a second Shaggy Man to battle the first, and the two just duke it out in an underground cavern where they remain buried for all of eternity. It was later revealed that Aquaman put the unconscious Shaggy Man in a capsule and placed him 20,000 feet below the surface of the ocean just for safety's sake. The Shaggy Man was later freed by Hector Hammond and transported to the Justice League satellite. This time it was Green Lantern who succeeded in defeating him by using his power ring to shrink the monster to a miniature size and imprisoning him. Fast forward a bit and the Shaggy Man popped up in Arizona, where the Green Lantern just straight up dropped the mountain on him. Soon after, the town of Justice was built around the mountain, and eventually the Shaggy Man broke free of his mountain prison. The Justice League defeated him after learning from his creator, Professor Zargarian, that the Shaggy Man's fur was a fiber optic conduit for energy created by photosynthesis. The Justice League managed to shave him and dump him on the dark side of the moon before his hair could grow back, and well, that was that. Check him out for yourself, starting with 1966's Justice League of America. Number 10. Nanny. First on our list today is the partner of the Orphan Maker, Nanny, a low-level telepath that paired up with the Orphan Maker, as the two thought that the parents of mutant children were just straight up evil and ill-equipped to properly raise and protect their young mutants from danger. She and Orphan Maker traveled the world searching for young mutants to take care of, killing their parents to sever any family connections, and using her minor telepathic powers to control her new charges. Dubbed the Lost Boys and Lost Girls, these mutant orphans acted as her quote-unquote new children. Her first major mission was at the State Home of Foundlings in Omaha, a facility where Mr. Sinister kept many mutant children for observation and experimentation, and she was able to liberate them after escaping the grasp of the X-Men. Fast forward a bit and we see Nanny and the Orphan Maker attack the X-Men in Australia in order to quote-unquote save them. However, this led them to being overpowered and forced to flee to see another day. During the events of M-Day, just after decimation, we see Nanny resurface once more, only to be defeated by Wolverine himself. Give her story a read for yourself, starting with her first appearance in 1988's X-Factor, number 30. Number 9. Tusk. Not a whole lot is known about the early life of this Inhuman, and honestly not knowing how he turned out to be like this makes him just that little bit more terrifying. Tusk has the ability to grow in power and in size into this monstrous form, as well as the power to produce smaller versions of himself that can act independently thanks to a psychic link. Tusk served Apocalypse as one of the original recruits of the Riders of the Storm, which lasted for quite some time until Strife overpowered Apocalypse and the Riders served under him. Fast forward just a tad and we see the Dark Riders return when a lot of the mutant population began dying thanks to the effects of the Terrigen Mist. They went on a bit of a killing spree, getting rid of any mutant healer, believing that their powers were a violation of the natural order, and the reasoning behind that was that mutants had had their chance at survival, and that delaying their extinction was not the way to go about it. This caught the attention of Magneto and his X-Men, and the team set out to take down the Riders, succeeding after Magneto overpowered them and finished them off for good with some good old explosives. Check out Tusk's story starting with 1991's X-Factor number 65. Number 8. Bulwark. Oswald Boglin was another X-Men villain that we don't know a whole lot about, especially when it comes to their backstory, but I mean, hey, that's not the worst thing. It lets us speculate, and I for one love that. Bulwark had the ability to expand his muscle mass to unknown proportions, increasing his strength, durability, and resistance. He also wore these red leather bands all across his face and body, and it's assumed that this was done as a means of self-restraint to gauge the safe limit of his powers, as they would start to get a little bit tighter the bigger that he got. He was recruited by Emplet to join their team and torment Generation X, and that's honestly exactly exactly what they did. The Hellions were successful in capturing the young mutants, but M had telepathically called for help, and it was answered by X-Men Bishop. M then took out all her frustrations on Bulwark, punching him through the school's biosphere, and then flying right after him. As he was about to attack M back, his muscles started to wither away, and knowing that he was defeated, he fled so that he could fight another day. Like many villains, Bulwark did not get a happy ending, as he was eventually captured by the revamped Weapon X program and was unfortunately killed. Give his story a read, starting with 1996's Generation X, number 12. Number 7. Spore. Andrew Graves developed his unique mutation at a pretty young age. Now what was that mutation, you ask? Well, for starters, he had a very animal-like appearance, kinda like Bigfoot. But that's not all, because his real ability was that he was able to control people's moods and actions through pheromones. Growing up with an abusive father who forced his mother to kill herself, Andrew grew up with an intense hatred for humans, and began using his powers to make others turn on each other and kill each other. He eventually adopted the name Spore and became a member of the Acolytes, and as a member of the team, countless civilians and innocent people lost their lives. For a time, he was a prisoner of Excalibur, as Dr. Rory Campbell wanted to cure Spore, but during the treatment, Rory's latent hatred of mutants got the better of him, and Spore manipulated Rory into an aggressive attack on him, which gave him the opportunity to escape. Sadly, though, this escape wasn't permanent, as he eventually made his way back onto the island and was killed during a Sentinel attack. It was revealed later that Spore's motives for killing were a lot darker and sadder than we originally thought, though. Spore just hated himself as much as other humans, and in his mind felt that killing humans was very wrong and that he therefore deserved to be killed himself. Check him out for yourself, starting with 1993's Uncanny X-Men, number 300. Number 6. Barrage. Another one of the original recruits of the Dark Riders of the Storm on this list today. If you're not familiar with Barrage, he had the ability to transform his forearms into organic weapons capable of collecting ambient energy, and then firing it into powerful explosive blasts. Barrage served as an agent of Apocalypse and seemed to follow him no matter what the task was given, as he was a part of the attack on X-Factor's ship and the attack on the Inhuman city on the moon. Alongside the other members of the Dark Riders, Barrage switched sides and served under Strife after he was able to best Apocalypse, and they defended Strife's moon base from the X-Men and mortally wounded the unfit Apocalypse in combat. After Strife's death, the Riders traveled the world challenging any and all mutants, killing Mesmero and even their own Synapse in the process, as they were too weak to even be considered worthy of living. Barrage was one of the few members of the Riders to survive the massacre by Wolverine because he actually wasn't a part of the team at the time. Honestly, lucky him. Fast forward a bit and the Dark Riders, including Barrage, embarked on a journey to kill mutant healers after a Terrigen mist cloud was spread throughout the world, endangering mutant kind, believing that the event was to be a test of strength so that only the strongest would survive. When they attacked the healer Shen Zorn, they were caught off guard by his display of ultimate power, which unfortunately cost Barrage his life. Check him out, starting with 1991's X Factor, number 65.
Number 5. Quintets. The Quintets were Harley's gang that she put together after striking out on her own, separate from the Joker. She got them all matching button-down shirts that kinda remind me of bowling shirts, to be honest, with their names embroidered on the front. And she even held auditions when putting her gang together, choosing from a few old favorites and former goons of the Jokers, as well as some new yet lovable goons. They only lasted a few issues, but the Quintets were pretty fun while they lasted, and they helped give Harley some of the confidence she was looking for in regards to starting to build her own brand and criminal empire. The original team included Buster, Louis LeBeau, Kenny and Nick Stubear, and Lester Wilde, though Lester was pretty useless. He fancied himself a Joker look-alike and imagined that Harley was in love with him, but he died on the team's very first mission. He also had literally no skills. Number 4. Gustav Hauptmann. Gustav Hauptmann was a scientist who originally was in Adolf Hitler and Red Skull's employ. However, he found himself kidnapped and forced to work for Dr. Doom later on in his life. Surprisingly, he actually found a lot of joy in his work as one of Doom's minions. Unfortunately, he didn't last too long. When the Fantastic Four infiltrated Doom's castle, Victor sent Gustav after them. Gustav took a flamethrower for the job, thinking it would be the best weapon against the heroic team. Dr. Doom, however, disagreed, worried for his priceless artwork which hung in the castle. In response to Gustav's poor choice, Doom killed him using a sonic device, and oddly enough actually ended up letting the FF go just immediately after that. Gustav was survived by his brother Gert, who then took his place as Doom's new mad scientist minion. I feel like that would be an awkward conversation. Your brother, I just killed him. Do you want to become my new mad scientist minion? I'd be like, no, I'm not. No, I don't want to die. Number 3. Honeysuckle. Honeysuckle was Poison Ivy's young protege and sidekick who appeared alongside some of the other Super Foes sidekicks in the original Super Friends in issue number 1. There, Poison Ivy was seen instructing Honeysuckle on how to climb, or more chastising her for wasting time chatting away. More speed and less talk, Honeysuckle. Honeysuckle looked pretty cute and also appears in the following issue of Super Friends, but we haven't really seen her since. It's also implied that there was some sort of competition where these youngsters auditioned to become supervillains in training. Bizarre. When I grow up, I want to be a supervillain too. Actually, that is true. I do want to be a supervillain. I would love to be Poison Ivy's protege. Number 2, Nasty Boys. People may remember the Marauders. It's hard not to, considering that they were the ones responsible behind the death of so many Morlocks. Poor Morlocks. And now, of course, the Marauders name has been redeemed by Captain Kate's new team of Marauders, who travel about working for the Hellfire Trading Company and freeing oppressed mutants around the world, helping them travel safely to the mutant nation of Krakoa. But while everyone has been talking about the Marauders on and on, Mr. Sinister decided afterward to create a new villainous sidekick gang, the Nasty Boys. Oh my. That's how I always read Sinister, by the way, in my head. I read him as like this hoity-toity, overly extravagant British man. That's my Nathaniel Essex. The Nasty Boys only lasted a few issues, but goodness, what a name and what a team. The team made their last appearance in Uncanny X-Men from 2019, not to be confused with the 2019 X-Men series. There's Uncanny X-Men and then there's X-Men. I know, it's confusing. We have X-Men 2019, Uncanny X-Men 2019, but they're separate. But the Nasty Boys were actually a product of the 90s. I mean, with a name like that, are you surprised? Number 1, Gaggy. Despite only appearing in a few issues, Gaggy quickly became a fan favorite. He first appeared in Batman issue 186 as the Joker's sidekick. Gaggy was a short entertainer and comedian that the Joker mainly kept around for, well, entertainment. However, despite how entertaining Gaggy was, he was not as useful as some of Joker's other henchmen, and ended up being replaced by Harley Quinn, who was also known for being Joker's girlfriend. Jealous of Harley, it was later revealed in Gotham City Sirens that Gaggy actually attempted to get rid of her, seeking revenge on the sidekick that had replaced him, but ultimately he failed, due to the interference of the other Sirens, Catwoman, and Poison Ivy. Gaggy's full name is Gagsworth A. Gagsworthy, and he recently reappeared once more in The Three Jokers book number 1, proving that although he may be lesser known, he has not been forgotten.